Good afternoon, everyone. Call the Board of Police Commission meeting for June 17th, 2024 to order. Before we get going, we have an extra commissioner in today with his dad, and he's just taking care of things, so we're good to go. I think we still have quorum, right? Yeah, okay. Just like to recognize that Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaty signed in this territory, recognizes that we are all treaty people. Thank you. We have 1.1 will have to be deferred because Commissioner Thomas is not able to make it today. Any community announcements? Hearing none, we'll move forward. Approval of the minutes for May 1st, 2024, May 30th, 2024. Would anyone like to put that on the floor? Moved by Commissioner Giles and Commissioner Blackburn seconded. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Approval of the order of business and approval of additions or deletions. I have one. We'll ask first the clerk. Do you have any changes?
So Chair Kent, just the deletion of item 1.1,
Yeah.
the presentation to Commissioner Thomas, and that matter will be rescheduled to a future meeting.
Terrific. Thank you very much. And I would like to put motion 11.1 on the floor as an added item. Hoping someone will second that.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Giles. Are there any further added items or deletions from the floor? No. Okay, now call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We need a
Those-
mover and a seconder, Chair, sorry.
Yeah, okay, I moved that. Thank you. Commissioner Blackburn and seconded by Commissioner Akindoju. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Thank you. Business arising out of the minutes, we have none. Now we'll call for declaration of conflict of interest. Seeing no one. Okay, move forward to consideration of deferred business, where there is none. Correspondence, petitions, and delegations, there are none. Presentations, there are, saying here none. Do we have any?
Chair Kent, this is for external presentations, and there's no external presentations.
Okay, terrific.
today.
Thank you. 9, information items brought forward. There are none. Reports for discussion. 10.1, Halifax Regional and Police and Royal Canadian Mounted Police Chief updates. So we'll start now with you, Acting Chief McLean.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is on? Yeah, it's on. Chair Kent, members of the board, everyone else who's joining us today. I will acknowledge, though, even though he's not here, I will acknowledge this is Commissioner Thomas's last meeting. He's not here. We will catch up with him at a later date, but we obviously like to thank him for his service over the years. I see he's a member of the board since June of 2018, so we'll acknowledge that as necessary in the near future. And so my thanks to him in absentia today. Couple things I'll just speak to. On Friday, we had the opportunity to promote 9 members of the police force. I'd like to thank the chair for coming by and giving her remarks. It was very well appreciated. I promoted 3 inspectors, 2 staff sergeants, and 4 sergeants with a lot of the movement that's going on in our organization. So my sincere congratulations to all those on their significant career milestone. You'll also see, I also want to take this opportunity today to introduce Acting Deputy Chief Andrew Matthews, who is with the recent re-retirement of Deputy Chief McCombs. So Acting Deputy Matthews is in place, as well as Acting Deputy Chief Dean Simmons, who's actually out of town right now on a mentor's course. As well, and it'll also be reflected in some of the work later. That movement sets up a domino effect. So in terms of, we have Acting Superintendent Greg Robertson back there as well as Acting Superintendent Carolyn Nichols and Acting Superintendent Dave Boone. So a lot of acting going on, almost like the Academy Awards. So my thanks to everyone for stepping up and stepping into those obviously very important roles and moving these things forward. This month, I also had the opportunity last week to swear in a police cadet from the APA who will be joining us for the summer and plans on joining us after his graduation. So that's always something to look forward to. And as well, we continue to recruit through our experienced police officer program, which is helping us. And we're looking nationally and promoting through HRM marketing, looking nationally and getting some good results. And so anyone who is a police officer that wants to join HRP, I encourage you to visit our website under experienced police officers, and we welcome your input. As I do each month, I'd like to talk about the firearm situation in the city. We've had 9 shooting incidents this year. Obviously, those were of concern, but we've taken steps to deal with those. We've had 0 homicides that have related to homicide to firearms this year, and we've had 145 firearms seized. For the month of May, from a traffic perspective, we issued 969 summary offense tickets, including 195 for driving without insurance and 52 for distracted driving, 27 charges laid for impaired operation of a motor vehicle. And there are also 88 calls for service reported for suspected impaired driving, 49 investigations. This month focuses on motorcycle safety. As the weather gets better, we obviously remind all our citizens to ensure everything is in good order and they're being very diligent on the road. From a community perspective, this month is National Indigenous History Month, and obviously it's a time to recognize the rich culture, history, and the lived experience of our indigenous peoples, and as well as our Indigenous officers, and we obviously commend that. And June and into July recognize Pride Month, and I have my name tag on, which was a product of our internal support network from the Halifax Regional Police in terms of, so we honor and celebrate the 2 LGBTQIA+ community and their history and culture and contributions to all our society. We also, and I'll always mention in terms of, as the, we will be hosting the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police at the beginning of August, mid-August, second week in August, right after the Canadian Association of Police Governance. So there will be lots of folks in town, and obviously looking forward to having everyone here and enjoying our rich, vibrant city. I just returned from Fredericton for the Atlantic Chiefs last week, and there's a lot of interest in everyone coming to Halifax, as there always is. And that's it for my remarks. Pending any questions or comments, or.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any comments or questions from commissioners? Hearing none. Thank you very much. I did neglect, so just before we offer the floor to Chief Christie, I did neglect to introduce Bill Moore in Kathy O'Toole's normal seat. Kathy is our CAO and she was not able to attend today. So Bill Moore, as Director of Community Safety, is in the seat and a regular in part of our team. So welcome, and nice to see you on my left. Chief Christie.
Good afternoon, Chair and board members and folks in the public. I'll be leaning on Inspector Jeff Mitchell. I've been away for 2 weeks from my duties and quite disconnected from work-related functions. So I'll be asking Jeff to follow up with the Chiefs of Police and assist with any questions at the end. Jeff.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and board members and members in attendance of the public. Just a little summary on some high-level operations. I would also want to echo the Chief McLean's comments to acknowledge Commissioner Thomas's contribution to the Board of Police Commissioners the last number of years, and we look forward to acknowledging that more formally when he is present. I'd also like to acknowledge and congratulate changes in HRP senior management as well, so congratulations on that. June 9th, members of Cole Harbour Detachment, the Integrated Criminal Investigative Division responded to a homicide in Cole Harbour. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the assistance from Halifax Regional Police in controlling, containing, and shutting down a significant populated area in Cole Harbour. Their frontline members and their specialized units assisted us during that investigation. One male has been charged, and I would like to send, on behalf of HRD, our thoughts and prayers to the family involved. In response to a significant number of vandalism, thefts, and mischief to vehicles in Cole Harbour, last couple of weeks, I would like to report that a number of youths have been arrested to date in relation to that spree. I know that caused some community concern in that area. In the west, we responded to a report of a 17-year-old struck by a vehicle at Oakfield Provincial Park. Members and EHS attended. The youth was transported by EHS Life Flight to hospital. Our thoughts are with the family and speedy recovery for that victim. I would also like to report a fatal motor vehicle collision on June 14th in Wellington, where a 30-year-old male succumbed to his injuries following a dirt bike accident. Again, thoughts are with the family there. Our street crime enforcement unit, which is based out of Cole Harbour, on June 4th, charged a man in relation to drugs seized in Colchester County. During a traffic stop, our officers safely arrested the sole occupant, a 25-year-old Halifax man, and located and seized 4 kilograms of cocaine. The same day, RCMP officers, with the assistance of Halifax Regional Police, executed search warrants at a home related to the man. During that search, located a significant quantity of methamphetamine and significant quantity of cash. So I'd just like to acknowledge the important work being done by HRD and with the assistance of HRP. During the weekend of June 7th and 8th, our Community Action Response Team had joint ATV patrols in the area of the BLT trails. These patrols were quite successful. They had over 250 interactions with members of the motoring public and reminded them to ensure that they were wearing the appropriate safety gear and that they were abiding by the laws and rules on the trails. As we approach the summer season, I would like to remind the citizens to be responsible and respectful trail usage in these areas and other areas throughout HRM. On May 29th, we assisted Halifax Regional Police in co-hosting the Canadian Association of Police Educators. It was a 3-day conference that was being co-hosted by HRP and Dalhousie University, educators from across the country. We hosted on day 2 a tour of RCMP headquarters at 80 Garland. It was a successful event, and it was a great, if I had to say to the board members and to the citizens, it was a great display of showing what HRP and RCMP in Halifax are doing in our daily work. And there was a lot of integrated sessions that took place. Last week, we helped celebrate National Public Service Week, where many of our units and managers acknowledge the important work that all categories of employees do each and every day. I would also join the chief, the HRP chief, in acknowledging National Indigenous Month and support to any pride celebrations that are occurring in our area. As this is high school exam week and next week is high school graduation week, I would like to remind and congratulate all of the graduates on their upcoming graduation next week. And I would remind them to celebrate your accomplishments in safe and responsible manners. As the chief alluded to, is the summer season, we have an increase in outdoor activities and people engaging in activities like boating, swimming, hiking, and camping. This is just a reminder on behalf of Halifax Regional Detachment for people to exercise caution and be prepared when it comes to boating activities and fire prevention. At the end of May, we conducted 3 community consultations in Tantallon, Lower Sackville, and in the Waverley area. As a result of some of those consultations, we heard from the citizens in those areas. Traffic complaints was a highlight that was commonly being brought forward. In response to that, we targeted our HRD traffic unit based out of Cole Harbour to those areas and Waverley Road to monitor traffic. those are the highlights for HRD for the past couple of weeks. Over to you,
Chair, if I may, a couple positive developments to add to Jeff. I want to thank Don Moser and Jeff Mitchell for keeping the ship afloat while I was away. But the operational superintendent position will be advertised internally in the RCMP next week. So we expect to have a formal candidate in that new role as early as September the 1st, more or less. But I've sent you a note about participation perhaps on the board. And the staff sergeant major position that we are creating is now officially established. And so we're going through the staffing process for that. For those of you who aren't aware what a warrant officer is, they're kind of the senior NCO. Our colleagues in HRP have one. They're the senior NCO, non-commissioned officer, that sort of represents issues of the membership, is also contributes to protocol and ceremonies and special events. And in our case, will also assist with special projects. So that's another positive development. I note that because one of the interests of the board is the PricewaterhouseCoopers continued evolution. And part of that on the RCMP side is making sure we get the right footprint, the right command team footprint in place to support that lift. So I just share that with the board too. Subject to any questions, Chair, by myself or Jeff Mitchell.
Thank you. Are there any questions from commissioners? Nope, hearing none. Thank you very much. Keep up the great work. I think we all, when we, in between breaks and seeing and doing our regular routine, we all take for granted that you're out there. So it sounds like you've had some busy weeks. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move now to 10.2.2, Community Survey on Policing. So we have two speakers, both chiefs, and we'll start with you, Chief Superintendent Christie. Just a verbal. Community safety, is this, have I thrown anyone for a loop here?
I think it's the body worn camera is the first item.
Oh, sorry, you're right. I checked off the wrong thing. Thank you. 10.2.1, was sorry for the confusion. Status update on Halifax Regional Police and RCMP Halifax Regional Detachment body worn camera pilot programs. Chief Christie or, okay, here we go.
So, Chair, so this, I think, was last at the board, I believe, 2021. So we have a presentation today. I have with me Acting Superintendent Robertson, as well as Gusharan Singh, who is our manager of technology, and as well as Joanne Smith from our research department. So they diligently and put together a presentation to speak to current status or proposed model going forward. I also understand as well that Chief Superintendent Christie has a few slides, and some of his people are here as well in terms of bring that forward. So I've just asked that.
So
Right.
what's the preference for you folks for going up first? Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll get you to go, everyone, each one of you, when it's your turn to go to the mic and go through your presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So either press the space bar.
The space bar is going to advance. All right. Yeah, we're good. Good afternoon.
Just before we start, just want you to be aware that for anyone sitting here, this screen will not be working today. And so that would be the one that you'd most likely be able best to see. Thank you.
Okay, good. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Chief McLean. I am Inspector Greg Robertson, as well Acting Superintendent for Support Division for Halifax Regional Police. And I'm pleased to provide a presentation, but first I would like to acknowledge the two employees behind me, Gusharan Singh, Stu Manager for HRP, and Joanne Smith, Research and Development Coordinator. And reports like this and requests for information do not come easy, and I rely on the folks behind me as well additional civilian staff to support us for research like this and presentations, and very thrilled to work with them on this presentation and many other projects that we have ongoing. So what we would like to cover today is the background with regards to previous body-worn camera presentations, talk about the current status, the benefits of digital evidence management, which you may not have heard before in our previous presentation, as well as the program requirements, the estimated cost, and the estimated timeline. So as a reminder, the originating motion was back in January 18th of 2021 and read as follows: that the Board of Police Commissioners support body-worn video in principle and ask the Chief of Halifax Regional Police to develop the appropriate policies and work plan related to rolling out a program and come back to the board with the budget ask for the upcoming 2021-2022 budget for development of a policy and to conduct a privacy impact assessment, and for the 2022-2023 budget for potential implementation subject to capital budget approval. As you may remember, previous Board of Police Commissioners updates included that the position of the body-worn video coordinator, which was originally requested and included in the 2021-2022 budget, was not filled. We had 2 rounds of hiring for the position and we did not find a suitable candidate. However, this position was reinstated in the 2024-2025 budget ask.
Good afternoon. So that originating motion was in January 2021. Later that year, in September 2021, was the HRM resident survey. And as part of the resident survey, every business unit has the opportunity to include a question that's of topical interest to them at the time. So for HRP and HRD, we included a question around body-worn cameras. So the respondents were asked, I'm in favour of the police having body-worn cameras, and the responses ranged from strongly disagree to strongly agree. 63% of respondents at the time responded strongly agree, and 27% responded agree, for a total of 90% that were in favour of the police having body-worn cameras. Since 2021, the RCMP body-worn camera program has obviously made significant progress since then. I'm not going to tread on anyone's toes by giving any updates there, but I would like to say that they've been unwavering in their commitment to saying to us that they'd be willing to share information and support in any way possible. That's puts us in a very different position to where we were 3 years ago, and makes it extremely strong for us. We are extremely fortunate to have them as our partners in policing for this and for many other reasons. The RCMP body-worn policy has been made publicly available, as well as the CACP policy, Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police. That was developed and on the CACP website. It's now publicly available and has a combination of different elements from agencies taken from across the country. As Acting Superintendent Robertson stated, the body-worn coordinator position was reinstated in the 24-25 budget. And also since the last update to the board on this, we've returned for updated details and estimated costs around digital evidence management system, DEMS, body-worn cameras, and also for fleet cameras. In the past 3 years, there have been everyone's made progress, including the suppliers, including around different software capabilities. Other changes since 2021 include an increase in our authorised officer strength. So we had an increase in 22-23 of 14 sworn officers, and in 24-25, most recently 19, for a total of an increase in 33 authorised officer positions. We also have an increase in our fleet. We've gone from 100 vehicles now to 120. I'll now pass over to Mr. Gusharan Singh to talk about a couple of projects in this area.
So since 2021, HRP has advanced the records management and optimization project. This optimization program entails several projects, which are currently, some of them are currently in flight, some are waiting to be worked on. An example of one of the RMS optimization project is the implementation of electronic disclosure project in partnership with the Public Prosecution Service. The ever-increasing volume, type, and complexity of digital evidence, which requires capture, storage, and potentially redaction of the disclosure material, requires additional software tools and DEMS program, which is Digital Evidence Management Program. E-disclosure is a creation of, or electronic disclosure is creation of files only, and it's not digital evidence. So this cannot be stored in our current Versadex records management system, and would not have the same rigor around it if stored on network drives or other storage. So previously, in 2021, the presentation was about the body-worn camera, but did not include the DEMS system. With the body-worn cameras being a tool for capturing evidence that will be uploading to DEMS, and also the electronic disclosure files, which would be uploaded to DEMS, and other files which are gathered through investigation process will also be uploaded to the DEMS program. So what is DEMS? DEMS is cloud storage for all digital evidence, including body-worn, vehicle footage, electronic disclosure, etc. And this is not just limited to those things only. So the pressure currently exists to responsibly manage all forms of digital evidence management. This continues to change the new forms of technology, complexity, and investigations, and protected chain of custody of evidence. Tools included in DEMS includes redaction, transcription, syncing of footage, excuse me, instruction footage. The DEMS is also more efficient and secure alternative to the current systems being used right now, which is the removable media such as USB thumb drives or DVD drives for disclosure processes, or storing on network drives. Members of the public will be sent a secure link to upload their footage for providing evidence to HRP. Redaction tools that are included with the DEMS program is audio, screens, faces, license plate, etc. There are several other police agencies who are using this system, and that include police forces like Vancouver Police Department, Calgary, and that's in the west. There's Fredericton on the east coast here, and for the InFleet, all of Ontario is using the InFleet video. The benefits of DEMS and body-worn cameras are increased efficiencies, including reduced officer time and reduced storage pressures in capturing, storing, sharing, and auditing of digital evidence. It's a tested and proven security software and encryption, which will build upon the work completed within the information security audit of HRP by HRM Auditor General. So this is just building upon what was already done by the Auditor General in order to enhance HRP's security posture for storage. I'm going to pass on to
Just a couple other points for the benefits of DEMS and body-worn cameras. So it's, of course, the capturing of evidence for criminal investigations, traffic-related investigations, sudden deaths. As you've heard in presentations before, benefits of body-worn camera in general is enhanced transparency and accountability to the community. Other benefits you've heard before, and lots of research has been conducted: early resolution of public complaints, early guilty pleas for court-related charges, and similar types of benefits. Also, for any police incident of significance that occurs in the community, we can review the officer's actions, do an after-action report analysis, and incorporate different training for the annual block training as a result of body-worn camera footage that we gather. As you recall, in the last budget, we outlined different calls for service, that the amount of time spent on certain calls for service has increased. What we don't want to do is come up with a product that adds additional time in which officers are spending back at the police station, out of service, not answering calls for service, thus increasing the amount of time that a call waits before the public sees a police officer. So we don't want a product without the adequate digital evidence management software that allows the officer to come in, upload their body-worn video footage, and then pass it on to the civilian side of the request for this program, which would be those involved in the vetting of the footage, preparing it for disclosure for charge files, involved in the retention of the footage and the eventual purging of the footage. So time on calls due to complexity of investigations. We've shown in the last budget there are examples of increased time on call. We don't want a product that adds to that. So that is another highlight of the request for the digital evidence management.
Thank you. So just a sort of short example around the efficiencies. If you think at the moment an officer might go to a store to collect some retail CCTV, they might be given it on a USB, take it back, have to upload it, have to store it, the property team have to keep it. And that can then come in and out of property as needed to show an interview or to take to court to show an evidence. That's all very much streamlined with DEMS. It's a way of just sending a link where the owner can upload the CCTV straight away. There's a watertight audit trail, including anyone who accesses it, and it's much quicker. So, as Superintendent Robertson said, we want things that are going to reduce demand on officers rather than increasing anything. So for the programme requirements for DEMS and body-worn cameras, for procurement, it would be, we would need to work with HRM procurement around the policy, and as permitted, the federal agreement could be explored. And there would need to be a robust regulatory framework in place that would need to include policy as well as the privacy impact assessment, all around making sure that use of body-worn cameras are lawful, proportionate, justified. There would also need to be robust staffing requirements in place for both the implementation stage, the change stage, the project that implements it, but then after that, the business as usual side to maintain the programme going forward. As an example for potential resources, just around the redaction and disclosure from agencies across the country, a very loose estimate is 1 FTE per 75 body-worn cameras. We would also need additional IT project and other support resources which would be required to implement and maintain the programme. That would be in the areas of training, communications, policy, multiple different areas. Community engagement is an area where we'd want to start early and make sure that information was provided for public education and awareness. There are multiple ways of providing that information, but we'd also want to be asking the community what information they need to know from us around it. Such avenues could include in-person sessions, website material, media releases. It's something that would need to be assessed as the programme developed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so to one of the most important slides of the presentation, program requirements and estimated cost. The estimated cost to implement a body-worn camera program with the included digital evidence management at HRP is estimated to be 2.4 million per year for a 5-year contract. That does include taxes. It does not include the human resource request. Joanne did mention 1 per 75, so simple math on that. We could be looking at 4 to 6 additional support staff. That's when the program's up and running. That doesn't include networking with HRMIT and having a project manager assigned from HRMIT and having additional staff within HRP assigned to implement the different phases, the procurement, setting up the internal IT requirements and everything else that comes with the program. So when it's up and running, best estimates at this point would be 4 to 6 additional staff. That could include court disclosure clerks, vetting staff, and if we find there's a high demand for FOIPOP, it could even be another FOIPOP person. But at this time, our recommendation would be most of these positions, if not all of them, would be civilian positions. So that cost would be based on 400 individual issued body-worn cameras, and another 25 would be in a pool. And the pool would be for the criminal investigation side of the house. So not every detective would need their own individual body-worn camera. We would have a pool over in the CID building in which they would use for different activities like search warrants and stuff like that. So this would also cover our canine officers, our emergency response officers, and the public order folks as well. With these estimates, this includes replacement of hardware at the 30 and 60 month mark. So in total, 425 cameras, 600 digital evidence management license, and the additional license beyond 425 would be for the folks that touch the body-worn video evidence. So the folks that are in the court section vetting out what needs to be vet out. Eventually, the folks that are in charge of purging of the body-worn camera footage, and the FOIPOP folks, analysts, different folks that need to touch the body-worn camera footage, they need the license as well. So as mentioned before, DEMS has the capability of auto transcription, redaction, tagging. Tagging means attaching the video to the police occurrence report. Quality assurance NCOs would also need the DEMS license. With this quote, we have 120 marked in-vehicle cameras. So this would be returning to what we had, I believe, 15 to 20 years ago. We had our patrol cars outfitted with in-car cameras. This estimate involves all marked HRP vehicles having in-car cameras as well, and unlimited cloud storage.
So in terms of an estimated timeline, we'd be starting looking at full 2024 this year for the capital and operating budget requests. And at the same time, begin framework development around policy, processes, training, communications, privacy impact assessment. Moving on to spring 2025, begin the procurement and recruitment processes, and look at beginning the training as well. This is, it might seem early, and also early to begin the framework development prior to approval of the budget. However, we know from experience the amount of time it takes to train in excess of 400 members, and we'd be wanting to look at a robust training program which included online and in-person elements with readiness individual checks before cameras would be issued. So it has to begin early. It would have to fit in as well with the training section schedule. So the planning needs to start very early for this. Moving on to fall 2025, winter 26, DEMS would be implemented. So that system would come in before body-worn cameras were issued, and it would give members a chance to familiarise themselves with the system and use it for other types of multimedia. Body-worn equipment arriving around that time, and infrastructure and network upgrades taking place. Then in winter 26 would begin the phased deployment of body-worn cameras, with new hires being in place and then being in place. I will stress this is a very loose estimated timeline and obviously subject to change as a more detailed plan would be developed. Underscoring all of that would be community engagement and public education, as well as development of a internal monitoring and evaluation program. We believe in the benefits of DEMS and body-worn cameras, but we need to show that. We need to document it, evaluate the program, and measure benefits. So that would be taking place on an ongoing basis. I believe that's the end of the presentation. So thank you very much for your attention, and we welcome any questions.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, just identify yourself when you're ready. I got you, Gavin. Lisa is up first. Commissioner Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you so much for the presentation and the update. Just a few questions. Are we seeing more courts across Canada requesting or requiring this type of evidence? That's question one. The cost estimate of 2.4 million a year, you would consider that, or would you consider that to be sort of a D-class estimate? Like, I'm just wondering how much stock we should put in that figure. And then the big one for me is, how do we manage the public expectations on this one? I mean, unfortunately or fortunately, in Canada, we're used to seeing the American experience of body-worn cameras with the footage being released almost immediately. And I'm just wondering, what has the experience been elsewhere in Canada where the body-worn cameras are already in use? How have they managed to manage the expectations from the public as to how and when and under what circumstances this footage would be released? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So I'll start with the expectation of the Public Prosecution Service, or for court-related request. Any type of evidence a police agency acquires, it needs to be disclosed during the initial disclosure of the charge file being turned over to the Public Prosecution Service. So as Mr. Singh earlier mentioned, with the electronic disclosure project, we kind of have a few initiatives merging now, kind of funneling into one. So electronic file transfer of charge files. The Public Prosecution, Halifax Regional Police, is the first agency within Nova Scotia to set up that directional transfer of a file. This would also be evidence that the public prosecutor would be expected to receive. We could not transfer it over.
Right.
So the requirement of a software that makes that work easier is the digital evidence management side of it. Because without it, you're going to amplify the amount of time that an officer takes their evidence, and they have to vet out the faces and different privacy related matters. Public expectation about it, nothing supersedes the privacy laws regarding this type of video. So if we have video, and it's your video, you're the person in which was the subject of the police response, you're entitled to that, but you're not entitled to the other individuals captured in it. We would have to then vet that out. So when I was mentioning perhaps the additional ask for FOIPOP, that's where that would come in. New tools with regards to police equipment, it definitely has public interest. I would expect that our FOIPOP related requests would increase substantially, people requesting their own footage. It is disclosed to the Public Prosecution Service, which is then turned over to the defense.
Right.
So the defendant will get it anyhow. They don't have to FOIPOP it. You had another question in between those two. And
Oh, just about
apologize.
the cost estimate. I mean, when we talk
Yeah.
about, development projects, we always look at things as D-class estimates, C-class, and,
I would say this is higher than a C or a D,
okay.
just because,
Yeah.
doing this previously, I believe we probably underestimated the need for an appropriate software in the digital evidence side of it. The vetting and the disclosure and stuff and the storage. Trying to come in with the cheapest estimate probably doesn't serve us in the long run. It's like a cell phone plan that you end up using more of, and then you get your monthly bill and you realize that if you had had the unlimited plan, you wouldn't owe money at the end of the month. So I don't think it's the Cadillac version, but it is a solid version which gives us a refreshed software at the 30 and 60 month interval. The percentage
Recognizing
of-
that the technology is changing at a pretty rapid pace, I would imagine.
There's
Yeah.
additional features available that weren't available in our last presentation. And our last presentation did not include the in-car camera portion as well. So
Gotcha.
that's a percentage of the 2.4 as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
If I
Thank
could
you.
if I could just add
Sure.
one thing to you. One of the questions you had, through you, Chair, to the board member, you had mentioned about what are the courts saying to the reliance on, and I don't know, I can't say with any degree of certainty in terms of what, if they've delivered anything substantive on that. I can tell you I have received correspondence from the Office of the Police Complaint Commissioner, who on several occasions has made reference to, had body-worn camera footage been available, this matter, would have been more easily, sort of dealt with to a certain degree on a few occasions in terms, again, back to your point in terms of it is not the panacea to everything that is out there, right? But certainly it does provide in certain cases, perhaps the most unbiased sort of perspective of something which had occurred, recognizing though that anytime even video footage viewed by individuals may be seen differently based on their own perspectives, but it is a place to start. And obviously with our partners here going live, very shortly in terms of it, it becomes even more, the timeline becomes even more, pressing.
Thank you. Commissioner Giles.
Thank you. I'm glad to see the freedom of information and protection of privacy lens, which is being put on the project. But I'm concerned that it's a cloud-based system, and I'd like to know that the cloud is administered and hosted in Canada as opposed to the United States.
Yeah, understanding that exactly, that it has to be stored within Canada. That's known by the many vendors out there, and for Sharon, I'm not sure if you have anything else to add, but that would be a pre-requirement through the procurement process for Halifax Regional Police, 100%.
And I ask simply because, as some of us know, maybe many of us know, anything which is hosted in the US is accessible by Homeland Security for purposes which are oblique to Canadian law enforcement and purposes which are unique perhaps to Homeland Security's requirements. So it would be unfortunate if people who were captured on video maintained for the purposes of law enforcement in Halifax found themselves under the scrutiny of Homeland Security for the purposes of border crossing, things like that. So that's good to know. That's a good piece of detail. I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Akindoju.
Thank you very much for the presentation. First of all, I'm glad that based on public survey, we've had about 63%, which means success. And why am I saying this? I'm saying this because this is not what we should be talking about today. We should have been talking about this 2 years back. It provides evidence for the community. It also provides protection and evidence for the police. So it's a done deal from my own perspective. So thank you for bringing this up. But my questions will be from the budget perspective. We use different terms or terminology for technology, and I'm used to that. And it draws cost as well. But when you talk about DEMS, basically digital evidence management, basically that tells me it's a server. It's nothing else but a server. It's a system that records And as of today, the police system should have some form of, we have over years stopped filing records and keeping files. And so we keep things digitally. My question is, would this be, and you use the word, a robust part of a server? That's one. And the reason why I said that is, why are we adding the budget together? The device and the recording should be different. That is, the budget for the dams should be totally different. And the budget for the body-worn camera should be totally different. When we put them together, it does not bring clarity. That's question number one. Why do we have them together? Question number two, would this be an operational budget or a capital budget? When you talk about the fact that it's recurrent, I think it's more operational when it's recurrent. But from my own perspective as an accountant, I would think both the server, again, I'll use the word server, or the digital evidence management system should be a capital budget. And probably if we know the actual true cost of the body-worn camera, and because they could easily be damaged, blah, 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 that could be operational. And my last question will be, in terms of policy, there should be two separate policies. Am I right? Is it plural? Policies. Yeah. Governing the digital evidence management system and the body-worn camera. Why are we merging them together? I rest my case. Thank you.
I'll start out and ask Sharon to step up. With regards to the different projects we have, records management optimization project, cleaning up our drives where we store all the evidence currently, which is the digital evidence management stored on HRP, HRM drives. There's nothing sophisticated about it. It's basically a place to drag and drop. And we have to recognize that with that comes the necessity to then extract it, have our forensic identification folks vet it for us, very labor intensive, and then apply the eventual purging to it. The DEM solution with the vendors, it's their software. This isn't purchasing body-worn camera from one vendor and creating a DEM solution or acquiring it from another vendor. So it's, you buy their body-worn, you are recommended to take their software, their digital evidence management. It is my belief that the other projects we have ongoing, cleaning up all the other forms of non-body-worn camera evidence, can be greatly assisted by the vendor's digital evidence management. So even if we didn't have body-worn cameras, I would foresee us coming to the board asking for funding for a digital evidence management without body-worn to clean it up. So in this presentation, it's using the vendor's software with the estimated cost. And Gershon, I'm not sure if you want to add something more to that with regards to the necessity of the software.
We're also building on what the IT audit by HRM Auditor General had done back in 2020 around there. It's just building on top of that, what they had recommended to clean up the network drives that we have. So this solution that we're trying to implement here does pretty much both things for us, not just storing the body-worn camera video, but also what the Auditor General was recommending. So we're putting two things together and moving forward.
And that's the cause of my question. Why do we separate the budget? I mean, I drove you through that because I wanted clear evidence of why we are putting the budget together. Thank you.
One is that the vendor that's being selected, they don't just sell you just the cameras, they sell you the whole solution. There's other vendors out there which will sell you just the cameras, but not the storage. So you're building that in-house. There's a cost to that. This cost that you have presented is a single cost for both the body-worn cameras plus where you're going to be storing that footage.
Just for our records, sorry, just for our records,
Wait a minute. You do get a second chance, just if it's a short one.
Yeah, very short, because he made a statement. I don't like the word sell. You know, it's difficult for you after all the work you've done. You're not just buying anything on the shelf. But what I'm trying to say here is, I lost my thought. They are designing a program that fits your situation. And all I'm asking for is, are we able, just for evidence that you've tried other vendors, and this is and all the vendors are providing one solution rather than different solutions. That's I just want it to be on record that we asked that, is this the only, have you tried other vendors? And is the solution all the vendors are providing is just one solution, or there's a process whereby we can separate this from the other?
If I just may, to the chair, to the board member, this was intended to be a relatively high sort of, high level overview in terms of, and certainly things can be broken down as it becomes more necessary. But part of where we're at today is because we've relied on all the work and trials and tribulations that our partners have already gone through, so that we don't have to actually, in terms of their because where they're at now is not where they started. And in terms of their vendor selection process and trials and testing. So in terms of, there would be a distinct benefit, I think, to having some symbiosis between ourselves and the RCMP in terms of our both body worn program and digital evidence management, in terms of, because at the end of the day, we are on one records management system. And in terms of, and particularly in CID, where we have an integrated investigative environment, it would be troublesome to have two different systems and two different digital evidence management systems and two different, potentially for the same file. And but that's kind of where we're at now. Of course, these are still subject all to procurement processes and everything else that we have to follow. But that informs our discussion here today as to where we ended up today. But I certainly get your point in terms of, and certainly the necessity to break things down further in terms of what that actually looks like. But today's thing was still, again, intended to be relatively high level to give you a sense of where we stood.
I'll take my turn for this.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner O'Malley.
I'm just wondering that in the future, do you plan to come forward with more of a detailed business case to support the ask in the future?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly in terms, like I said, this was again intended to be, for anything that has to go through either a capital or an operational budgeting process requires, more significant detail and whatever. Again, this was meant to be relatively high level to give you a sense of where things were and an update that, hasn't taken place in quite some time.
Right. I think it would be very beneficial to, if you can, estimate out somehow the benefits, and it could be, very broad generalizations about it'll save this amount of effort in the typical complaint investigation. And if you could extrapolate those things out, I think that'd be worthwhile in the business case process later down the road. And when I looked at some of the numbers, it's just some of the things that I found some things a little confusing. So again, as input for the business case, if we're going to have, 400 cameras on persons and then vehicles, another 240 cameras just for Halifax Police, that came up with 665 cameras. That's what I estimated it, which was almost 9 FTEs to do the redaction based upon the model of 1 to 75. So again, when you come back with the business case, make sure that number's clear. And then if I add on the cost for doing that for the RCMP within this detachment, assuming 200 additional cameras or so, that grew to almost a little over 12 FTEs. And then I see the technologies being refreshed at the end of the 3rd year and in the 5th year. Is that estimated baked in so that at the end, if we're refreshing at the end of the 5th year, it would be good to see like a 10-year cost of ownership model.
Yeah, we had that
for 5 years when you're buying everything brand new again in the 5th year.
Yeah.
And as well, you should probably include in there cost of damaged equipment, cost of losses, estimates, stuff like that. Although a PIA is important, that's kind of the first step, there is a threat risk assessment required, because how the RCMP would use it and within the controls of their access model for users and stuff would be different than what Halifax Police would have. So I would expect part of your implementation, you would have on the work plan to do a threat risk assessment. Is that being contemplated?
Threat risk assessment would be on our list as well. The PIA, I had initial engagement with the chief privacy officer on this. So a lot of the comments that you share, we have some of that information available. We had a 10-year cost estimate as well. And at some point within that, it's almost like a lease. You own it.
Yeah.
And then the operating costs annually become significantly less. And part of the damaged and lost with this quote, it has that insurance that if it's broken or lost, it's replaced.
Although considering the tight integration between the devices and the service, I would argue that after 10 years, you're still into the subscription model and you're continuing to pay. You don't ever really own it.
Yeah.
So bringing the data back at some point is something you want to consider as well. You mentioned procurement. So are you exploring like how to procure this? Are you looking at, are the feds going to do some type of standing offer? Are you going to sole source it? That seems like a complicated process that you're going to have to dig into.
Last time we had a breakdown of what we estimated would be initial capital request and then ongoing money required to keep the program alive. But within Section 18 of HRM's procurement policy, we had the ability to basically piggyback on the RCMP's procurement process. And as the chief mentioned, of great benefit, having the same vendor, same records management system and whatnot. So I would say, yeah, additional procurement meetings with regards to the path forward would be on our list.
And again, when you look at the benefits in a detailed business case, you might want to add on the digital evidence management system benefits outside of the body worn camera that help justify the expenditure.
Certainly.
That's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Chair.
Thank
Chair.
you.
Chair.
Go ahead.
Jeff, yeah, go ahead.
If I may, Chair, with the support of my good colleague, Acting Chief McLean, to the Commissioner. Lots of awesome communication behind the scenes around the policies and so on and so forth. So whatever our team has, this team has, and so on and so forth. So back to your conversation about, are the two agencies able to complement and work together? 100%. So we have policies, they're freely available. The procurement stuff, if for some reason we can buy the stuff through the national standing offer and that helps, 100% we're all in to do that.
Thank you.
No, not yet. Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for the presentation and update. It's been a while, long time in the working, so happy to see this here. And this little guy might hear my voice and wake up. So sorry if you hear a scream. So a couple quick questions. Some of them have already been addressed. So one, I know we've approved a budget a long time ago. The budget that was given for this project, was that to hire somebody to do this work, or did we put in the budget to actually hire someone to create the program? I don't remember, and I'm just wondering if anyone remembers what we actually put in the budget for this project. I couldn't seem to find that fairly easily. The other question is, I know in 2020 we had draft policy related to body worn cameras, and part of the timeline here was to draft policy. So just wondering if we're still going off of the policy that was drafted in 2020, or are we starting fresh because things have changed? So just wondering on that piece. And there's no direction given here other than what you've said. And I just wonder if you can comment on, like, would it be worthwhile going to council sooner than later, asking to start a pilot to procure some now? Because my concern, and we have some tech folks here, my concern is that we go all in, get the tech that's needed, and by the time it arrives, technology, policy, cloud storage has changed, and now we've spent $2 million or whatever the dollar amount is to get 600 plus cameras. So I'm just wondering if there's appetite for us to procure some now to do a pilot to kind of work out some kinks and realize if that's needed or not, and not leave that there.
Thank you for the questions. So from my recollection with regards to the body worn camera coordinator's position, they were tasked with researching policies that are out there in the Canadian context, conducting the privacy assessment research as well. We didn't fill the positions,
Right.
but behind the scenes, this team was still furthering that research. So I believe you are correct. We did have a draft policy, but also the Canadian Chiefs of Police have a policy which our draft would mirror, as well as the RCMP's. Grabbing a few body-worn cameras and under, perhaps the pilot idea, I don't believe it would be the most advisable approach. And there's a couple of reasons. Testing it on a small scale really doesn't change what we need on the large scale. We still need a digital evidence management solution.
Right.
Perhaps license would be less, of course, but the infrastructure to set things up, it's still the same amount of work, just on a smaller scale. And I don't really believe that, anything from a pilot, the amount of resources that we would have to contribute is going to result in anything new to us. We already understand, the concepts of body-worn camera. They've been implemented in many other jurisdictions, some towns and municipalities, and now with the RCMP on large scale. I would advise that we begin the slow phased implementation process, which Joanne explained, as opposed to launching, say 50 cameras. That may be in the phase 4 and 5, that 50 cameras roll out the door, but I wouldn't say that we grab them quick with the fear of losing the greatest software and the abilities that are there with any vendor. Every year there seems to be a new feature that's available.
Right.
I'm not saying we're going to accept or need all the new features, but I'm perhaps missing any benefits of a small scale launch. Any comments?
Well, that's helpful. So just on the answer related to the policy. So do you believe, since we have like the draft that we did a little while ago, plus the chiefs,
Canadian
yes,
Chiefs of
CSAP and others, it'd be fairly easy for us to get the policy started. Well, it's already started, get it adopted to allow it to move forward without it, because policy takes a long time to develop. So with some of those templates and that work already done, you feel that could be done fairly quickly?
I do, and the main reason is the integrated model, and say, under the oversight of Nova Scotia Department of Justice, Police and Public Safety, you're not going to find a different policy, my belief, in Halifax Regional Municipality that we'd find down Bridgewater with body-worn cameras.
Good.
I just don't see it. I think eventually there's going to be that provincial oversight from Department of Justice, and I don't believe the public would expect, if we are backing up Tantallon RCMP or Tantallon into Bedford jurisdiction, that you would have a different set of policy. You wouldn't do the citizens justice, and I would say would be in sync with the same policies, same retention dates as the two chiefs mentioned. We have the same records management system.
Excellent.
We want to have the evidence collected in the same manner, stored and vetted, disclosed, and retained in the identical manner.
Great. And the last one, my final question with the time I got left, is just community engagement. How do you envision that rolling out?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner, and through you, Chair. So with community engagement, we envision it would start off with provision of information that would be aligned with, again, our partners who have already done a huge amount of work in this area. There's questions and information available on their website along with the policy, and we would build information specific to HRP. It could be on the website. There's other avenues we could look at. Vancouver have just started their rollout and they have a video around it. We can consider a number of different options, and but some of it will be guided by the community as well. We can ask, what do you want to know and how do you want to receive it as well? Make sure that we're providing information in an accessible manner.
And just to add to that, I think for you to the chair is that you play a very important role in that discussion piece, like the board's, the board's role as the conduit, and you play a particular important role in terms of how we move that forward in multiple media, I would suggest, in terms of its eventual outcome.
I'm just going to take a moment and ask a question before we go to the second term. A lot of the questions have already been answered, but very quickly, the notion of the pilot that Commissioner Smith brought up, certainly appreciate your answer, but would also, and the expectation that our chiefs are working together, the pilot is actually, the way I could look at it is the pilot is actually already happening. It's just happening within the RCMP space, which we're going to have the benefit of. Is that correct? Is that what you're leaning on for this space? The second question is, since I have you, is it's safe to assume, Chief Christie, that you are using DEMS, and maybe is it or is it not? And the third is body worn position that we have now. Have you filled it? Do you still use see a benefit of it, or is it kind of captured here? And if it's not being utilized, where will that money potential pot go?
Yeah, so it hasn't been filled. It hasn't been filled. If you remember, Chair, part of that budget piece also was extrapolated over a 6-month period. So in terms that really wouldn't fall in place till 6 months after the actual piece. And we've had discussions about whether that position is necessary or not. And I guess we really don't know. Part of it comes because there's still a lot of, well, I would say the heavy lifting on the policy bit and that stuff I think is done for the most part. There's still a lot of work around, the bigger pieces around, because it's a culture change piece. Like it's a big piece around that particular point. But back to your first question in terms of we will surely be watching with interest in terms of the RCMP's rollout in terms of, and even our rollout, if everything has a pilot phase to it one way or the other in terms of whether it looks like, do 600 go online one day, or do you move that over a important period of time? But it's important that it be done in a relatively short period of time, because just, the reality of something occurring in a place that didn't have one as compared to one that did, that, we have to be very mindful what the potential, ramifications of that are. But I think, the RCMP's program will certainly inform, our piece going forward, I think, because, it will touch in parts of our territory, like really at the end of the day of all our area, right? So.
Jeffrey.
Chair, I think if I recall your question specifically was, do we have an evidence-based management system? I don't think we do. When we think of evidence for everybody in the table, inclusive of any police force, some of it's physical. It's the window from the break and enter. It's the blood-stained garment. So there's always a physical place. Mm-hmm. And it's only more recently that the digital part about where is that all stored and sorted. So I don't believe we have a national official digital evidence management system. What we are moving to with the presentation you'll hear shortly is cloud-based retention of the same thing that we're discussing, right? For video camera recordings, right? For the body-worn camera, if a member's, using it on shift, it's uploaded into the cloud and then it's able to retain. But if a police officer today is in an interview room taking a statement on, say, an assault, right? They may not have their body-worn camera on today, but right now they could have a digital recorder taking their complaint or witness statement. So that kind of USB stick or recording file gets stored somewhere up, either associated to Versadex or into into the property room, right? So that continues to grow, but it's consistent with body-worn camera will be uploaded into the cloud. And I think you'll see the RCMP within 10 years have some type of formal digital evidence management system too, because we need to go that way.
Okay, I might come back as well. Commissioner Akindoju on the second round. So you have a shorter amount of time. Just saying.
Thank you, Chair.
3 minutes.
based on what we have, this whole thing started in 2021. We're in 2024. I'll talk about that. My concern, maybe because I'm a private sector person, is this is something that we should have done 2, 3, 4 years back. And I'm in support of this, 100%. My question, probably not a question, advice, is that we need a business case that is robust, that takes care of, this is not a new thing in Canada. It's just new in our environment. And acting chief said, it's going to change culture. That's fact. Technology will change our culture. When phone came, it changed our culture. So it will. But what I'm trying to say here is, I have been on the board for a while. I still struggle with the budget process. I'm still trying to understand, how is this going to impact the budget process? How can we step forward on this? How can we, on the side of the board, push this to happen yesterday, not tomorrow? This is what I'm saying. Therefore, if you make it easy for me to put a vote, because I have my own vote, I will want to understand this as a business case. What, for example, we talk about the issue of replacement cost. There will be a replacement cost because you're talking about 5 years. And is this going to be a capital budget or operational budget? When you talk about people, that's operational. The number of people we add every year, and we go through this as a budget. So how can we have this as a business case, totally encompassing the need to enhance our recording system, I still call it server, and incorporate new body cameras to make sure that this project comes to fruition. This is what I'm saying. I just want us to be clear that we have a time to conclude this, because when we start the budget again, all this will go through this process. Thank you. I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Any further questions? Commissioner Smith?
Thank you. Just a quick one. So you give us a timeline. There's no motion attached to it. So is it proper to assume that for next budget cycle, there will be something baked into your budget, HRP, RCP, I'm not sure who, I guess both of you, baked into your budget related to this project? Like, how do we, as Commissioner said, how do we make sure we're moving forward?
Yeah, yes, I think this speaks to part of the distinction between both an operation and a capital budget, because
Right.
capital budget doesn't come through here per se, but in terms of obviously, the support for capital budget pieces is important from the, even she thinks so, right? So
Yeah.
in terms of, it's important piece, the board gives their support in terms of a capital, because when we were here last year, remember, we had long talks about capital budget, because capital budget is going to impact facility
Right.
and all those other things in terms of, you're absolutely right there, Commissioner Akindojo, in terms of, bodies that may be related to this, that may be down the road actually in terms of will be part and parcel of the budget that you will vote on in terms of, because that's of an operational piece. But the big chunk of that would be capital. And just also we'd be going in front of the capital committee in terms of what we would like to, which is a different process.
Different process, but it will come here because we asked
Yes,
capital
but you don't, your role isn't so much nay or yes.
But
or
we'll
no,
get to see it.
But you get to see it.
Okay,
yes.
but so should we expect in 25, 26, that's next budget, right? 25, 26, that's one. 25, 26, that you'll be coming with body worn camera on that?
I think maybe it would be before that, actually. in
Yeah,
terms
it's
of
showing fall
24.
on your slide. It's showing the fall. Usually we start this conversation in the fall. Remember we asked for it early. Yeah, that would be the
Yeah,
one
yeah,
that
yeah.
it would come in, I
Yeah, we
think.
can't go, yeah. We can't go back.
Greg, you have one? Commissioner O'Malley?
Thank you. I guess I'm the new guy, I've only been here a month, but I'm not quite sure about the whole IT plan, technology strategy. This is a costly project, obviously. It's an important one. I'm a big proponent of technology. I'm just wondering, though, over the next 5 years, there must be other competing initiatives. Maybe equally weighted for importance, maybe not.
Yes, please.
At some point, you kind of come forward with a technology plan for the next 5 years so that we know other things that might be coming a year or so after this request, just to put in all the context?
I'll just start out with a few of the upcoming initiatives that I'm involved in, and Mr. Singh can certainly add to this. So body worn is just one of many projects. Electronic file retention and implementing purging of our collected integrated records, that's a big one. Another project team. Implementation of next generation 911 for the PSAP or dispatch center, another one. It's going to require an integrated project team, HRMIT and HRP STU. Sharon, the next priorities for digital evidence, for records management optimization. You can speak to some of them. The evidence in the property room, better ways to purge our evidence, find our evidence. And I'm sure there's a few others that you have on your list.
So currently, we are working on the electronic disclosure and the cleanup of the property module. The next ones on the list are, and these are not in any order, is the gang module, which is in the RMS system, and major case management system, which is already part of Versadex, and we are not taking advantage of that. So those are the next two big projects that are on the list after we're done with the electronic disclosure and the property cleanup that we're doing. Retention of electronic files, that's the Superintendent Robertson has already mentioned about that. That's another big project that's on the list for us to have that done. There's already budgets for these already there for these projects.
That's what I was just going to add, that these are things that are budgeted through the RMS optimization already, capital funded already from, going back years in terms of moving on. This is a new, what we're talking about today is something new.
And I guess when I asked the question, I was looking, as you look down 5 years, are there other big projects that are currently unfunded that are on the technology roadmap?
Headquarters.
Size building.
Well, I think part of that is, 5-10 years from now, we don't even know what technology is going to be able to give us in the sense of, there's a lot of, when you even look at, the body worn, how AI will have impacts on a lot of the stuff that we do in terms of, there's the bodywear software piece that has, I think is draft 1 that they speak to now that actually, so if I have an interaction with you, the body worn picks it up. The body worn basically spits out a report already of what just happened. And then you have to go in and fix it up and add some other stuff to it. Right. So the technology, I'm sure in 5 years from now, the technology will, we don't know what we don't know, I guess, in certain regards, but that's what part of the optimization problem was with RMS, was trying to look out for as far as you foreseeably can in terms of what the systems that we already have.
The NG911, I don't think that has a budget associated with that right now. And we did also had the Versadex vendor who came and provided us some of their recommendations how to optimize the records management system besides what we're already doing. So there's a couple of projects that are on the list there. I can't. I have it on a spreadsheet. If you ask me what they are, I have it on the spreadsheet right now, and that they have recommended. So we'll be working on those as well. And there's no budget for the new projects.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. If I see there are no other speakers, I'd just like to add my appreciation for this update. This is what we've been looking for a while. And although it may have seemed like this wasn't on our radar, it really was. It just, there's so many other competing interests. That's where Greg, I think, was going as well. So thank you for this. It's greatly appreciated. Just to reiterate that the expectation that in our fall process to begin the budget process, that this would, we look forward to more coming to us. And I'll just leave that for now. I think we've kind of done a good job on this, so we appreciate that. Just before I finish though, Chief Christie, are you also adding a presentation on top of this, or have we covered off some of those?
We have about 5 slides,
Okay.
Chair, which I think would be helpful to flash through fairly quickly.
Perfect. Okay, you're on the floor. Thanks.
Thanks. I'll ask Jeff to introduce folks, but some of our team, I just want to reiterate, Joanne, Acting Superintendent Roberts, Sharon, Acting Deputy Commissioner, Deputy Chief Andrew Matthews. Tons of good work in this area happening behind. And we as operators depend on all those specialists and experts in technology to make all this work. So again, the fact that both teams are here is a reflective of that PwC transformational initiative. Jeff, over to you.
Thank you, sir, and Madam Chair and board members. Before I introduce my colleagues from the RCMP body-worn camera side of the house, I'd like to acknowledge the important work Greg's team, support of his team in my past 9 months there. We have been meeting regularly on IMIT projects. Greg's team has helped me along, literally along the way, so tremendous support from that side of the house. I'd also like to tell people listening that the rcmp.ca, which is an open link, body-worn cameras, has important FAQs and policy links and references and information on body-worn cameras, which my colleagues will get into in a minute. I would like to introduce 2 of my colleagues from H Division headquarters in Dartmouth. Mr. Christian Gallant is the head of the Nova Scotia RCMP divisional IMIT team, as well as Miss Jamie Smith, and she is the Nova Scotia RCMP body-worn camera project manager. And they're going to get into some of the questions that you probably asked previously, some more information on that. So without further ado.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Chiefs, guests, and the public. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Christian Gallant, and I am the head of IMIT for RCMP in Nova Scotia. And with me is Jamie Smith, who manages our body-worn camera and digital evidence management team. So Jamie is going to talk about where we're going from today on. I'd like to take a few minutes just to talk about how we got here today, and hopefully I can answer some of the questions that many of you have. The solution that we will begin to roll out, if we step back a number of years, started with a request for information from product vendors and consultation from a number of police services that currently use body-worn camera and digital evidence management. From that request for information, a statement of work was generated, and we invited vendors to participate in what was called as a request for qualification, which led to a request for proposal. 10 vendors went down to 3. And those 3 vendors became what would be known as our successful candidates for body-worn camera and digital evidence management. And then we started what was known as a field test phase, where we tested the solutions to make sure that those solutions met the rigorous statement of work that was put forward. So Nova Scotia was a field test division, and we're very thankful that we were a field test division. And I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the work of Jamie and her team. They were able to provide, as well as the members in Nova Scotia that participated, valuable feedback and shape the solution that we are rolling forward with today. So one of the questions earlier was body-worn camera and digital evidence management. Are they 2 separate things? The body-worn camera, the actual camera, I would say, it's not a simple piece of software, but it is the least expensive of the 2 pieces of the solution. The digital evidence management solution is that's where the bulk of the cost would go. When we look at information technology solutions, the device is one thing, the information that we harness and then we have to maintain, that's where the added expense comes in. And when we look at these solutions, the solutions are acquired, it's called a solution as a service. So the vendor that we're moving forward with, Axon Solutions, provides a digital evidence management solution, and then they provide a camera that they use to upload that. And they have an in-car video solution that you can place in your vehicles, and all of that video would be uploaded into what's known as their digital evidence management system. Would we be able to use a camera from vendor A and a digital evidence management solution from vendor B? The possibility would exist, although the complexity of trying to integrate those, especially when we're looking at implementing on a large scale, would be great. So we look at that from a solution perspective. The camera and the digital evidence management are one and the same. And I'll give a little bit of an example on that. The Axon solution has something that's called multicam. So if we had 4 or 5 members that are responding to a scene and they all have their body-worn cameras turned on, when they go back, all of that evidence is automatically uploaded into a single source in the digital evidence management system, and then we can process that accordingly. And Jamie can probably speak to the technical nuances of that a little more. But those are some of the things when we look at it. We also talked about digital evidence, and Chief talked about having an audio statement, having a video statement, closed circuit TVs. The end state, and Jamie again will talk about that in her presentation, is to have all of that consolidated into a single digital evidence management source. So that's why when we look at these, especially when we're talking about body-worn camera and digital evidence management, we talk about them as one and the same, because one does complement the other. So as I said, I would again like to acknowledge the work that Jamie and her team have done in preparing Nova Scotia, and specifically HRM, to move into the body-worn camera and digital evidence management phase. Not to steal her thunder, but the approval from Treasury Board was gained on Thursday, and we expect that the final contract for the body-worn camera and digital evidence management will be signed very soon. So Jamie's going to talk about some of the things. She's going to talk about the evolution of the solution in Nova Scotia and specific to HRM, and then certainly we will be open to answer any questions that you may have. So I'll turn it over to Jamie.
Great. Thank you so much. That was my first bullet point too. Before I get started, I just want to give you a bit of background I actually started with Halifax Regional Police. In 2007, I started my policing career, and then I moved into a role with the RCMP, and then I was fortunate to move into a different role supporting Versadex, the records management system that is used by the RCMP and HRP. So I've worked on many projects with the STU unit and Gersharon's teams. So 2 years ago, I moved into the body-worn camera role, and a lot of my work now has been the field test units are not in HRM. So I'm thrilled to be here today and be able to come back to HRM and present this and work with the team again. So it's really exciting for me. So thank you. Aaron? Perfect. Okay, I'm going to do my best to read this. It's pretty small. So this is my first point. Christian was talking about the Axon Public Safety Incorporated. This is who our contract is through with Axon, and the Treasury Board did give us an approval on Thursday. We anticipate the contract to be completed the end of this month. And the details of the contract we will be able to share with other agencies. I did confirm it could also be shared with Category 2 agencies. So Christian mentioned the statement of work. And I know there are questions about, the pilot phase and what's included in that. Being able to have a copy of that contract and review the statement of work, that will be available at the end of WP4 once we've finished those tasks. So I estimate that'll be in the early fall, September, October. You'd be able to use all that. And it's a rigorous statement of work because it is national. So we're looking at areas in the north, different climates, a lot of different areas across nationally that have gone into the statement of work. So all of those items we'll be able to share with our partners. We've also done a lot of work on policy, training, procedures, facility and security requirements have all been developed. So I've been in this role, as I said, for 2 years. We did the field test this winter, and it was finished the end of March. The users that were involved in the field test, I should let you know, there were 7 detachments. 4 of those were traffic, and then 3 of them were general duty detachments. So we've got a lot of relatable information and experience that we'll be able to share. A lot of our policies have changed along the way as situations arise. We've had to develop our standard operating procedures. And look to develop guidelines with CERT. We're also meeting on a monthly basis with the Crown. I didn't meet with them last month, actually, so just about a monthly basis with the Crown, and that's been for about 1.5 years now. So a lot of our findings and work have been through our stakeholder engagements, and we've been able to use a lot of knowledge and their questions and input to really work towards these processes and policies. And now we're able to we put the work in place, but through the field tests, we're able to really do a proof of concept and really show that what we put together is going to work and make some adjustments. And as we move forward, I'll get to this later, but I expect additional changes as we move towards implementation in the fall. So our implementation is is planned to be underway in October 2024. And that's when we're going to be starting in HRM, and I'll get into that a little bit. I know there was mention of stakeholder engagement, and I can't really highlight the importance of stakeholder engagement. There's so many times I thought we'd have it all covered, and then I go to a town council, and I don't think I've left an engagement session without having to bring something to national or look into something, and I thought we'd had everything covered off. So town hall sessions, making sure we're engaging with community members. There's also a lot of work that we've done that could be shared with the public survey, and that's after our field test. So there's a lot of great information we got from the public as well. Okay, so this is just a bit of a roadmap to provide you. So I know there was a lot of questions, or a few questions, as to what capabilities and functionalities we're using with the digital evidence management system. So I should say, even though the field test ended the end of March, those detachments in Nova Scotia are still using the body-worn camera and the digital evidence management system. So I'll talk a little bit about what we used in the field test. Oh my goodness. Need stronger readers. So our training was online, which HRP said they were going to use as well, a combination of online and in person. So our online, there were 2 components to that. One was Axon. It was amazing training. Loved it. For online, sometime, we've all done the online sessions. It's very informative and intuitive. And then our RCMP Agora training is more policy-based. So we requested, before we did the in-person training, that all the members completed that online component. Oh, sure. Oh, the acronym Agora? Oh, this is a test. No, I can't. But if you could take that
Yeah,
one.
board, just Chair, through you, Jamie's explaining that we do have some online training, so that instead of pulling people from the field, they can sit at their computer and go through a 2-hour, 3-hour sort of digital sort of explanation of steps. And so it's just one way to get the information out.
Perfect. Sorry, I'm just going to move this to field test. There we go. And then I'll move it as we go along, just so I can see it a little better. Thank you for that. Okay, so we did do, and this is similar to what we'd like to use in implementation. So it's the online and then the 4 hours in-person training. So for the in-person training, that would be the coordinators on my team going out to the detachments and doing the training. We have cameras that were provided in a developmental environment. So the members were actually able to get hands-on and use the camera. We could show them, make sure they're comfortable turning it off and on. It's one thing to do the training online and think you know how to use it, but to actually get hands-on, making sure you understand when to turn it off and on, that was really important. We use the RCMP Central Help Desk, and there's also a manual linking of PROS records to evidence in the DEM. So everything is manually connected. So if we've got to label a file, it's all done manually. And I'll explain where we're looking to go into future state. And I should also explain PROS in the rest of the province is the records management system that we're using, whereas it would be Versadex in HRM. So that's kind of why I want to give my background as well, because I can tell you the work that we've created and the workflow processes in the PROS environment, that records management system, from my experience in Versadex, I'm confident it's going to work. We'd have to get together and ensure, the process that we've created, will work for you as well and your membership. But based on the different tests that we've done, I'm really confident we'll be able to share that information, and it'll be a good time saving and good structure. And that's to be able to put in redaction requests to your support teams in the system. There's also a manual download of videos for disclosure. So everything's done manual at this state. So it's still downloading the digital evidence or exporting it to DVDs or CDs or thumb drives to provide it to the Crown. This is another reason it's so important to have these conversations with the Crown to talk about, I have a vision and a plan for how we're moving forward with Axon, and what it's going to look like in the future, but keeping those meetings to make sure, are they going to be able to keep up with those requirements? Once we're ready to go, are they going to be aligned? So we're in very good shape. And our documentation was in English only for the field test. So even though the field test ended in March, we're still, our members are still using it, and those are the systems that we're using now. When we move into divisional deployment, so I briefly mentioned it's going to be October 2024. We haven't received the official approval for national, but that's when we plan on moving forward. There's going to be some smartphone app interface capabilities. So currently we have an app that the members have used. I'm going to back up for a second. With most technologies and most projects that I've worked on, it takes a long time for something to roll out. I'm very surprised, having just started the field test, how much we're already using. There's an app we're able to use, Axon View. We tested it, pretty quickly, but I'd say very thoroughly, did our test scripts on the app, and the members are already using it. So we didn't have to wait till the fall. So I know someone had mentioned, let's get this rolling quick. We're really able to do that. So this Axon app, it allows the member to log into their phone, their police issued phone, and they can actually label their videos on the digital evidence management system before their camera is docked on the system, which is great. It also allows in the future to, this is a new technology. So they mount their camera, they can log into their phone and see, what am I looking at, until they get used to it. Because in the beginning, before we had the app, members are trying to get used to the placement. Where are they going to put it? What does it look like? So it's a great feature to have. Another one of the apps we plan on moving forward with, but I haven't tested yet, is Axon Capture. So the benefits of this, again, it hasn't been approved. I need to get my hands on it, make sure it meets our information management requirements. It would be looking at photos. So that capability to upload photos to the system, and also audio statements. So if we can ensure that, it meets the retention requirements, that we have some way to manage it, we're able to relate these files and look at the retention piece, then this is something we can move forward with as well in the fall when we get started. There will be an integration with the records management system. So that's really important, because I know retention was mentioned, and just it's almost like as soon as we bring out a new system, occasionally we work backwards to try to do catch up on the retention piece. So National is actually looking at creating a solution so that the DEMS system will be integrated. There will be a solution so that it can capture the information from the DEMS, and there'll be a trigger in Versadex. So it'll attach it to that file. So I don't know exactly what the parameters are that they're going to look for. It could be location, but they're going to be able to match it to that. So the importance of that is the retention. So if you have an assault file, it's going to be held for a certain amount of time. If it's linked to the DEMS, once we get to that part in the testing, if it's linked, it'll take care of the retention and the purging on the DEMS system as well. So we're going to work with HRM and HRP to ensure successful integration with Versadex RMS. And electronic sharing of videos with external recipients, that's also another item that is going to be starting in the fall. And then there'll be additional training material in French as well as English, where we just had English for the field test. Okay, so that's what we plan on rolling out, and I'll get into the timeline on the next slide. Again, I apologize for just showing part of it, but I'm struggling with my readers now. So for future state, and just to set it for you, when I talk about future state, for us, I would like to be rolled out, and I'm an optimist, but I feel based on my experience, this is realistic. I'd like to have Nova Scotia set to go the end of March 2025. But when we talk about future state, it's when nationals rolled out. So that would be more the fall 2025. We're going to start on other enhancements. So I know HRP had talked about in-car video. That's not something we're using currently in our field test, but it's something we need to incorporate. We like to incorporate. So, but we have our DIO, our Divisional Information Officer. So he's aware of any of the changes. I report up to him. He has a great understanding of what's happening with body-worn camera and DEMS. So, and Radio Workshop reports up to him. So if there are changes being made to in-car video, he's going to keep that in mind so that we can try to get all our systems in one spot for our members to do disclosure. If you look at, I'm just going to give you quickly, at it sitting in a detachment, I've seen members before go into different systems. They need to provide a video for evidence from their car. They need to provide one from cell block out in the parking lot. They're in car, which is a different system. So that's 4 different systems. They have to log in, grab that information for another password. It's just too much. So our goal is to get everything under one DEM system eventually. And Christian will manage it to make sure that's all aligned. Live streaming capabilities. I get this question everywhere. So, and even though I'm talking about, you can see members can actually use the phone to view different things I was telling you, it's not live streaming. So dispatch isn't able to see, isn't able to come on the, look and see what's going on the body worn footage there. That does exist and we will be testing it, but that will be future state. And we have been testing it actually in our office, so it's exciting to see how it works. I know it will work. It's just getting the proper policies and approvals. And again, that's all stuff we can do the work on and share with you all. Okay. And anything else we can see, other continuous improvements in alignment with the RCMP's digital strategy, those will all be incorporated. Okay, so talking about implementation, I had mentioned that we'd like to start in October 2024. I'm going to talk mainly about HRM, what the focus is here. So there will be other detachments that we're going to be looking at rolling out as well across the province, but I'll keep this specifically for HRM.
I just want to just get a sense of how much longer you will be.
Oh,
Don't want to
sure.
rush you, but at the
Yeah.
same time, we've been nearly 2 hours on our on this
Oh,
one
sure.
item, and that's all. Just how many more slides do you have?
2. This is the last one.
Is it?
Yeah, the
Okay.
last one is just for questions.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Great. Sure, yeah. We talked about training already, super users, and these are items we can talk about. So when we look at the phased in approach, so for Halifax specifically, we'd like to start small to make sure all the items that I've told you, I promised you is going to work in your RMS. We want to make sure it does work. So we'd like to start in Preston Detachment and Metro Traffic Services and our Community Action Response Team to start with a smaller number in that month 1 so that we can do a proof of concept and make sure what we put together works. If it goes well and we don't see any issues, we can continue on with possibly Musqueam Harbor, Sheet Harbor, and North Central, some outlying areas. And then we can move into phase 2, which would be onboarding Tantallin, Cole Harbor, and Sackville offices in a phased-in approach with the watches. The idea behind that is that we'll get a few from each one of the detachments and the watches onboarded in one time. We also have a backup plan. So we'd like to go with month one. We can start with those few members. If things don't work out, or if there's some work that we need to do on the RMS side, we have that time. And like I said, I've worked with this team on past projects, so I'm confident we can use those months. And then we can make those changes to the Versadex RMS that are needed, or the DEMS, anything else that's required. And then we can save everything for months 5 and 6, or adjust the plan as needed. So I think it's definitely achievable. And I'd like to be complete by April 2025. Again, I'm an optimist, but it definitely, based on the work that I've seen, I think we can do it. And the technology is, they want to move forward. Axon's view, when I met with them in Ottawa, they think this is a very achievable plan and almost a slower and safe rollout. So, which makes me feel very good.
Thank
So
you very
maybe I'll make
much.
a comment before Jamie and Christian make some final comments. But one of the questions, Chair, from the board was costing, right? Costing. So it's back to that different model. Our internal cost to equip ourselves and so on gets rolled up through into the FTE cost per member that the municipality pays. I have spoken to Haley Crichton, who's the Executive Director of Justice, to talk about the importance of getting sort of a apples and oranges type fact sheet or something to be socialized with key stakeholders like the police board on the cost. But at the end of the day, there could be some variance between Christian Shop will have some librarians, for lack of a better word. When all this information goes up into the cloud, he will have some librarians. He will need some trainers. And we're able to kind of share what that looks like. It may not be the exact sort of numbers, but there has to be somebody that maintains it. There has to be teachers on it. There has to be people that replace the equipment. And so all that cost is sort of rolled up into that one in FTE cost. So it won't come in the same way that Commissioner O'Malley asked about sort of a business case from us. It's already been sort of mandated, for lack of a better word. It's being costed in, and really Department of Justice can help around exploring how much our FTE, if our FTE cost last year was 172, will it be 172,500 next year, or et cetera? The financial people will figure that out. I'll come over to Christian and Jamie for final comments before we turn it over to the board. But it's been a long time coming, but it's an innovation. And when we innovate, sometimes HRP are a little bit ahead of us, working with the provincial crown for some e-disclosure they've talked about. Sometimes we might be a little bit ahead, but that's okay. That's good teams bringing the strength of their teams to bear. And Jamie and her team, as well as Christian, enrich us in Halifax Detachment. They're there to support us and support you. And so we're very fortunate to have them on side. Christian and Jamie, maybe final comments over to you, and then we'll turn it over to the board.
I do have 2 points. I wanted to say the validation of resources is so important to me. I want to make sure the coordinators, I have enough coordinators. I don't want to, at the end of this project, be going back and trying to make a business case for more resources. So that's happening on a monthly basis. Looking at the requests, is this realistic? What are they doing now? So I won't get into it too much, sorry, but that's being validated, and we'll share out all that information. I also want to mention the cameras are going to be replaced every 30 months. So it's the newest of the new that we're getting. Our field test, we went with an AB4 camera. The Axon Body 3, I wrecked the surprise. It was the Axon Body 3 is what was for field test. And now for implementation, we're already moving into the AB4, the Axon Body 4 camera. So it's replacing it. It's keeping up with the newest technology, which isn't like most of the other projects or dealing with infrastructure that we deal with. It's usually you complete the project and then it's almost outdated. So it's unique.
Yeah, and just quickly, I'll close by again acknowledging the work between the RCMP, IMIT, and Superintendent Robertson and his team on a number of issues, and they have provided tremendous support to us and to our teams as we move forward, and we will be there to support them as they move forward into their body-worn camera and digital evidence management team, and they'll be able to learn from our lessons. So that will be, we look forward to that as well. And Jamie had mentioned that we do have an aggressive timeline by April of 2025. And I am very confident that we will achieve that timeline. Jamie and her team have done a tremendous amount of work within HRM to make sure that detachments are prepared from a technology perspective, making sure that we are ready to go when this goes live. So very, very confident that by April 2025, we will see this in a whole of Nova Scotia, but specifically in HRM. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Subject to any questions by you and
Thank you. We do have a couple of questions. Commissioner Akindoju.
Thank you very, very much. This actually gives me the clarity in all this. And I'm going to take time to explain this so that you know that our role is to create impact. I honestly have looked at several meetings, we talk about this and that. I want to clarify what the board's role as a partner to the police force would be in this particular situation. I would suggest that our role would be supportive, zero approval. And I'll tell you why. I have a phone here. In my phone, I can see my factory. There are cameras like you see there. That camera is useless without the digital evidence system. In this one that I have here, the digital system is in my office. It records, it repeats. I can send cameras of people who walk around my factory to the police. That's what it does. But the camera itself is a device, and several devices can be added to the camera, phone, that, and the other. Why do I say this? All the things we're talking about, like I said earlier, is one unit. The major unit is DEMS, and it's capital. And we have no role supporting the police with capital, but to approve, but to support. So I am saying here that we must make it clear that I, for one, am in support of this. And the other part is operational, simple, the people part, people that would operate the system. So in my own case, in my advice, in my example, Wilson is the vendor, Wilson Security. Alarm.com is the DEMS. And the camera can be XYZ, could be anybody, like he said. But for it to work well, if a vendor recommends the same camera and the same DEMS, that's fine. But if you look at the details from the vendor, he's buying the camera from somebody else. That's not the detail here. What I'm trying to prove is it's a capital venture. And if you would take my advice, please present it as a capital venture. And then separate the people part of it as operational. So we're clear. And then let's tell HRM that they need to support this. We've been talking about this since 2001. So we need clarity. How would this impact capital budget? When is it? Who is involved? That's what I'm saying here. But if we put it all together, lastly, I'm so sorry, lastly, when you use the word 2.4 million on a recurrent basis, it doesn't tell me it's a capital expenditure. If that says it's the method of payment, that's fine. But we need clarity. But to close, my support here is I want this done as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Chair. So my one's really quickly. I'm wondering if it's possible, so you've done all this work and you're testing in the office and officers on the ground are doing it. Is it possible for us at the commission to get like some kind of like scenario in action? So for example, a resident requests footage from an incident, and maybe this could be an acted out incident by officers on the ground. And then we get to see, you know, the incident that happens, when the video is processed. So, you know, if there's redactions, then you block things out, and then what happens afterwards? Like, okay, this is now sent to the Crown, or this has now been sent to, etc. So I'm just wondering, is it possible for a future meeting for us to kind of see the technology in action? Because that will also probably help us and the public understand, like, you know, we see it in the news on different scenarios, but it'd be great to kind of see in a, you know, our context how the technology is working.
Yeah, Chair, through you to the Commissioner, I think we can get halfway there.
Right.
Commissioner. When we think about body worn cameras, there's competing privacy interests. And I'll use the
And I know
CART
that's
right?
the problem, yeah.
The CART team, right? So the community action response team might be going on an operational call to a homelessness encampment, and the policy may dictate it's on and it's recording. At the same time, 3 hours later, they may be doing a school talk on cybercrime, and therefore it may not be activated.
Right. And that's why I mean, like, maybe it could just be something that officers act out a situation just so we can see it.
So I think, again, we can explore going forward with how can we make sure, subject to the board's interest, you get
Right.
sort of that parameters. And we can reflect on the sort of the acting out, because it may be more informative to simply have sort of a matrix to say,
Maybe.
you know, this is kind of an example of when it's active and this is an example of when it's not active, and sort of keep it relatively simple. As the presentation showed, most of the policies are actually all nationally available.
Right, right.
And freely available.
Right.
So the third part that I'd make in terms of a distinction, in terms of getting members to act out a scenario, there's so many scenarios, which ones do we choose, right? For the public to have accessibility, any of our material can be ATIP'd. Might have to pay $12 to ATIP it or whatever the current fee is. But at the same time, that is balanced again, is the material being used in an active investigation?
Right.
And is it before the Crown Attorney? So there's lots of different stages to that, but I think we can follow up offline and bring something back to the board.
Yep, that's the only ask. It'd just be great to kind of see some of the technology in action. So thanks. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Malley?
Thank you. I just had a question, just a short question. I, like Yemi and others, I really support the technology, but when it comes to HRM with the two police services, is the RCMP implementing their own cloud tenancy, or are we going to have two tenancies? And like you've mentioned the idea of the 4 officers going to the scene. If it's 2 and 2, 2 Halifax Police, 2 RCMP, they show up, they record something, they go home, back to the office, they record into 2 different instances of the digital evidence management system. It's in 2 tenancies on the cloud, and they never connect because for whatever reasons. Is that an issue, or do you plan to have a single tenancy for all of HRM?
So I think what you're hearing, Commissioner Chair, through you to the Commissioner O'Malley, is what this presentation didn't explore is there was a different company that the RCMP field tested as the initial preferred sort of solution provider. And the field test flunked them out. They failed them out because they weren't successful. So then they went to the new vendor, and we're talking about Axon here. And by coincidence, I think HRP are looking at Axon because we all see the value, more or less, of ubiquitous with the technology, right? So again, if we have the same camera on both sides, we have the same structure on both sides, there are efficiencies and value to that. But the teams will kind of work through that behind the scenes. But from the RCMP side, this part, you know, we're stuck as a national organization with vendors. We've selected our vendor. I think through this process, you're hearing that the HRP team are working through their process, and they may wish to tap into sort of the vendor that we've selected. And if we can facilitate that for economies of scale and so on, we're very open. But over to my colleague, Chief McLean.
Greg just has use that one.
If I understand your question correctly, is we jointly respond to the same call for service. And I did ask this question of the vendor. We just probably haven't had a chance to discuss it. Is HRP would have its own user license under the HRP umbrella. RCMP would have theirs. So stored in the cloud, but separate clouds. For disclosure and retention, that's the complexity of our future discussions, how we work that out. Where is that evidence stored? Because at this point, it's not likely going to be attached to the records management system Versadex. It will be part of the vendor's DEM solution in which we store it. It's not being stored internally, it's cloud-based, and then provide that link to the public prosecution service to access it. And it's simply, public prosecution has a user license for RCMP they access and one for HRP. Same go number. They just have to draw it down separately. Can we figure out a way where they can draw it down into a mutual shared cloud? Likely, but we're not there yet in the conversation. But you can't share the license. I did ask that question, is it the same cloud for all of us? And it's not.
Right, and that was the heart of my question about, with, two integrated services, not having two disparate systems in the end, where it makes it more complicated to actually reap the benefits. Even though you bought from the same vendor.
Yeah.
You have two separate instances. How do you make it work together? Does it work together? Because otherwise you've got two silos over the next 5 years. That was the heart of my question.
But I would just add to that, currently, that's how our RMS works. We have one RMS vendor, Versadex. We have separate, we input separately but it's under one RMS, but it can be, sliced and finessed and dealt with every way it becomes necessary. But at the end of the day, and it's all accessible to each other. So I'm sure we can, that's beyond my expertise. I'm not going to pretend it is, but, those are things that we'll have to work out going forward. The key part being having non-disparate vendors.
Could I just add to that as well? Sorry. So it is, you mentioned the instances, it would be two different instances, whereas Versadex is one jurisdiction or one instance. So I did meet with our colleagues in BC. They came out last week, and that was one of the questions we asked about information sharing. So it can be done, but it will be on two different systems. And how are we going to share? We're going to work that out, but we asked for their best practices as they share with Vancouver, what their planning is, so we know it can be done, but it won't be all in that same instance to pick it up.
Thank you for that.
Okay, I'm going to wrap this up and give us a break. So we're going to take 5. Is 5 enough? Should be. Yeah. 5-minute break and 10 minutes. Okay. The lawyer needs 10. We got a parking issue. We don't want you guys going out there giving him a ticket. Okay, we'll return at 3:15. Thanks. Thank you. Okay, folks, we're going to resume our meeting. We're now on 10.2.2, Community Survey on Policing. So I have it listed as both of you doing an update, both chiefs.
I think that's correct. Sounds good. We actually submitted a report.
Yep, I've got you here. So does any, I'll just, would you like a report, a presentation? Are you? Was it on our information reports? Does anyone want to have any opportunity here, or we could ask for it to be on a future date? Okay, I'm not quite sure what to do here, Madam Clerk.
No, they submitted an information report and they were hoping to make some verbal remarks about it as well.
Okay. I'm going to ask Chief Superintendent Christie to start.
Chair, thank you very much. If I may defer to one of the experts at the table, which is
not me.
Colleagues, right.
Well, go ahead. Thank you.
Well, I'll just start off by saying that, again, this is I think another report that motion that is a few years old in terms of bringing it back. So I think, and Joanne can speak to it. Joanne, she did yeoman's work in terms of laying out the history of it and you know, the current state of being involved with the HRM citizen survey, which I believe is getting ready for the fall of this year. And then I think at the end of the day, we have to ask some questions about whether we believe there is a police-specific survey that is wanted, you know, from the board. And then the second piece of that being, is that a process that you wish to sort of own? That was a question that comes back from looking at the historical. Is this a board sort of driven survey, or is this something that remains with the police?
Okay, so I had a conversation with you, Josh, quite recently. So I'm going to come to you after we hear from Joanne. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the board. So, yes, the information report was submitted, and in a sort of nutshell summary of what it contains, as it stands right now, there is no standalone community survey specifically on policing, but it is a topic that has come before the board a number of times over the past several years. Currently, questions on policing asked to the public are done through the resident survey, with the most recent one being in 2021, and the 2024 cycle is currently being prepared by HRM Corporate Planning and Performance. We have contributed to that together, HRP and HRD. The questions we've proposed are to stay the same as 2021, with removal of one question, which is the one around body-worn cameras, as we feel it's no longer relevant to ask that question. And secondly, to reintroduce a question from the 2018 survey, which is one of the core indicators that was developed as part of the national research project previously by Public Safety Canada and HRP. That's currently that proposal is with HRM for consideration, together with all the other submissions from the other business units, because they have to consider it together and the amount of questions and respondent burden. So while the HRM resident survey is a useful vehicle to obtain some information from the public, it does have its limitations. It has, we can only ask a certain amount of questions because all business units are being asked about, and there's not the opportunity to go in depth. So there are still many compelling reasons to have a standalone survey on community, to the community on policing specifically. There is no standing offer currently in place to do that. The most recent one expired in September 2023. So if it's the will of the board for that to be explored, then as Chief McLean said, it would be a question of would that be for the police to do, or would the board wish to consider investigating the financial administrative implications of assuming ownership and undertaking it? I know since the last the last time this came substantially before the board, the policy has been revised, and again emphasising, it's the board taking ownership of the survey is something that has been discussed previously back in 2013 when it was suggested by Chief Blay at the time around the board taking ownership due to being the conduit between the community and police service providers. At the time, the board decided to assume ownership, but a few years later, it returned to police. So again, if anyone has any questions about the report or in general, I'd be happy to take them all.
Before I go to you, Josh, I have a question. Is anyone else here? I just want to hear a little more about, in 2013, it was with the board. Did the board actually execute a survey?
My understanding is no. Mr. Moore is able to confirm. Yeah, it was not.
No, and
executed.
eventually it went back there. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So Josh, I'll ask if you could just sort of repeat some of the conversation that we had, which is very close to this, but I want to have your perspective on it before I'm going to make a recommendation.
Yeah, well, I think essentially, Josh Bates, policing policy strategist. So I think essentially the decision point here is the board happy with the 4 or 5 questions in the citizen survey? That's one. If not, then there are 2 options, conceivably. So one would be for the police to take up the survey. Another would be to have our own board survey that we administer. And of course, both those options would require funding and execution. If the board takes this on, then that would be likely a request from council for funding. The other point that I'll make is that the board in the policy manual does have a policy around community survey to measure trust and confidence that references community members need to be consulted annually, right? So obviously that's something that we have not been doing. So from my standpoint, what I'll offer to the board is I do not think from the board's perspective, the citizen survey really meets our needs around measuring trust and confidence in policing. That's one of the roles of the board. First of all, it's only a small number of questions. They don't kind of get at the heart of that matter. And it's only every, 3 or 4 years. Whereas I think annually is kind of the minimum that you'd want to do to establish baseline data and then measure trends over time.
Okay, thank you. So, go ahead, Jeff.
Chair, if I may, I just want to acknowledge that Daryl Harvey and Jeff Mitchell have been talking to Joanne and her folks as this information document was created. I think there is a perception in the industry that if police are asking citizens how we're doing, there's pros and cons with that. There is a national RCMP survey that we do get some stats with that they can break out sort of the HRD part of that. But I do think there's a number of sort of important points that Joanne and her report has illustrated that if it's done outside the policing sort of envelope, by the governance envelope, I do think there is some interesting benefits to that. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. I think you just stole my thunder. That's okay. I was going to basically say some of the same. And what I think that because we don't have a motion here or any sort, I'm going to suggest that maybe because we have some unanswered questions, which is how much is it going to cost? What would the platform be? What are the questions? So I'm thinking that we create an ad hoc committee just for this to sort of satisfy those answers and with a report back to council. And I think that it could start with 2 members of this committee working with Josh. And if you need to pull in resources like Joanne and maybe someone from the RCMP to make sure that we're not stepping into a place that would be, I don't know, just territory we shouldn't go into because it's more operative, then so be it. But I think that's the best way to move this one forward. Yeah, Marty wants to say something.
Yeah, just if the original motion called for a proposal to come back to the board, So what the chair is suggesting would be in line with that. It's just a question of how that proposal is brought into being, I guess.
So is there anyone that wants to speak to that? If not, we can put a motion together pretty quick. Go ahead, Yemi.
Thank you. Before we put a motion, the only thing I want to add to what you've just said and probably what Josh said is the timely, conducting a survey on a yearly basis for me doesn't make sense. It's a survey. You probably, 1 year is too short. It's probably every 3 years. There are other events that occur between the police and the community. The committee attends a budget, they do that, and the police themselves have community events that they gather information. So I think, I totally agree with you that the third party should get it done on behalf of the board governance, but it can't be every year. That's just my suggestion.
I think that's a situation where we will learn from the first go round and then come back on some of that. I will not put the motion on the floor. Could someone here to create an ad hoc committee, 2 members of the board and working with our policy advisor? Are you working on that, Andrea? Good. And while we're at it, maybe we can add a piece to a point today. That would be nice to, is there any, maybe I'll just throw it out there as a call of interest. Lisa, you would be interested in participating? Greg, would you? Yeah? Okay. No pressure there. And this is ad hoc. This is not permanent. This is for very specific unless we need it in the future.
Gotcha. Quick question about
Go
that,
ahead.
Madam Chair. Just wondering what what you see as the life expectancy of this ad hoc committee, just recognizing, of course, that after October.
Well, let's say you would have it back to us here in September,
Okay.
October,
Fair
early October. Because we would be meeting in August and then not again until October.
Probably not. I don't think anybody has meetings in October. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Let's look for that timeline. If you need an extension, we'll address it. Just waiting for the wording on the motion. Is she close? Andrea, before you post it, did you hear that we have determined that Commissioner Blackburn and Commissioner O'Malley would like to be approved to be the representatives? Thank you. And then, so while we're doing that, Bill Moore would like to offer some insight.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to point out in the report, there is a reference to the developing a common data standards for measuring attitudes towards police in Canada report. I'm sorry, the report you have from Joanne, that's here.
Good,
It's
okay.
referenced in there, but when we were asking about questions, just a little bit of background. at that time period, there was so Chris Giacomontoni, Dr. Chris Giacomontoni was actually working as their in-house researcher at HRP during that time period. And the same discussion around being able to link survey questions to an outcome of being able to measure levels of legitimacy and trust of the police was basically given to an expert panel nationally under the guise of Public Safety Canada. And they did a report. So in that report, there is a list of questions that actually have academic rigor around them that they can link directly to measurement. And the concept at that point was to allow the ability to ask those same questions on a year-over-year basis, so you're able to measure differences. So instead of having new sets of questions develop every year and measuring something different. And the secondary piece that was looked at nationally in my previous role was to see whether or not that could be rolled out nationally, so that we were able then to see if there were regional differences across the country. So that's the report that's referenced in here. So I would just for the committee, there was a lot of really good work done on that. I would just want to, I know that you had it noted in here, but I just want to kind of give it another plug for the committee, because I think there's some good stuff in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
That's not the idea.
Okay, so looking for that motion. Commissioner Blackburn.
All right. I'll move that the Board of Police Commissioners for the Halifax Regional Municipality create an ad hoc committee comprised of Commissioners Blackburn and O'Malley, who will work with the policing policy strategist to produce a proposal for a community survey of policing as requested by the board in its 2021 motion, and for the board to forward this proposal to Regional Council. I so move.
Seconded by Commissioner Smith. Seconded by Commissioner Smith. Are there any questions or any further debate? I do have a question. Can we just clarify, forward this to proposal to Regional Council? What's that, what, at this point, where are we going with that?
I believe the reason why that's there is that Josh had mentioned that if it was decided that the board would go forward with a community survey, that they would need to make a funding request of Regional Council, because this isn't currently included in your budget.
So I think this, to me, is premature, that the committee will come back with costing, which is why we would go there, and whether or not we have the capacity in our envelope, because we do have a small budget, or do we need to go to Regional Council? But also at that time, maybe there is another amendment that might go in with that recommendation. So
Proposing a friendly amendment is to end it
add,
at motion.
Andrea, just after its motion, and put and return to the board, period?
yes.
Yeah.
Assuming everyone else agrees.
Who moved the motion?
Lisa,
Does Lisa agree?
Friendly amendment, yes.
you agree? Okay.
Seconder, yeah.
Any further debate? Go ahead, Commissioner Smith.
Thank you. So that was going to be one of my comments on coming back to the board, because I wasn't sure if the committee is going to be looking at pricing this. So that makes sense. What I wonder, because when we had this discussion forever ago, it feels like there was a consultant who was hired to create the survey. I wonder, do we still have access to that old survey? Like, is that still around? Because they did create something, and the board felt that we should pause on it. So I don't know if that's still available or not.
Yeah, the standing offer, my understanding was that it expired before the survey could be developed, and then a new standing offer was created, which then also expired. So I haven't seen or discovered a iteration of a previous survey.
There was
I think you have to turn off your mic, Joanne.
Okay, sorry. There was something, again, as this work goes on, then you can probably dig around and see what that was. So support that way of moving forward. And I guess the only question is just about timeline, which we talked about, is would this happen, before fall or not? So yeah, I think it's a good way forward to start the work and go from there. Nothing else from me. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Sorry. I'm going to say that again in the mic. This turned on this time. So we're moving to 10.2.3, Board of Police Commissioners Budget Timeline. And I'll offer the floor to Josh.
Thank you, Chair. So the Police Act, of course, requires the board to cause the Chief of HRP to annually prepare a budget. And some of you might recall that in December, the board adopted a budget timeline to formalize this process and to ensure that key milestones, including the budget engagement, which we're now doing every year, are met. What's missing from that timeline, of course, is any reference to the RCMP. I will note that it's important to keep in mind that the board does not have the same legislative authority over the RCMP budget as it does over the HRP. However, recognizing that the board functions as a police advisory board for the RCMP, the board may wish to adopt a timeline that includes both milestones for the HRP and RCMP. So that's what's being proposed today.
Thank you.
Just a few more points. So this would be keeping in the spirit of the police transformation study recommendations around integration. And the last thing that I'll say is that the timeline would not apply, would only apply during non-election years. So years such as this year where we're having an election, we'd have to back things up a little bit to accommodate the election and the swearing of new commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Marty?
Just two things on this. First of all, as Josh noted, there's nothing in the legislation that gives the board jurisdiction with respect to the RCMP, although there's been cooperative work between them. So the motion ultimately in its execution depends on the cooperation of the RCMP to, which you may want to ask Chief Superintendent Christie about.
So I think what's going on is we have the information, we have a motion that doesn't include RCMP. But it would, in the past, certainly last fall, we had RCMP come forward with high-level overview of what they were looking for in their budget. And then we proceeded to try to mirror, not necessarily always successful, but try to mirror the process. Although, yes, we, as a board, we would be in an advisory role, we still have the capacity to influence it. Because if even though we don't get to approve it, or did not approve it, we do get to influence it. And so just throwing that out there. Commissioner Blackburn, did you have quite a point? Does anyone? Jeff, go ahead.
Chair, thank you. I acknowledge King's Council's comments. I think for the board, PricewaterhouseCoopers report, you've called us, you've asked us in the RCMP to be as collaborative as we can. And so figuring out what our path forward is, I don't think it's just limited to the board. I had a conversation with Executive Director Moore probably 2 weeks minus 3 days ago, where some of our ideas for future growth will be shared very early with Mr. Moore, likely this week, even before the board would be aware of it. I think the challenge that we all have as a collective is with an expanding population hitting Halifax Regional Municipality, what are as many data points and ability for all the different systems to project the needs for the citizens tomorrow, 5 years from now, et cetera? How do we grow towards that? And so I think in that spirit, I want to commend Josh's work, and I think the CFO was involved, that we would be pleased to try and model the most collaborative approach through the budget process, recognizing there's still, for lack of a better word, statutory or contractual differences, but bringing those ideas forward, I think are generally constructive. King's Council.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing from that is if the will of the board, and I would like to encourage this, to amend this to include RCMP. Somebody will need to put this forward if they.
The timeline, actually.
Okay, I think, yeah, I'm understanding it now. So,
Motion is good.
the motion is good as it is, if someone is interested in putting it on, because what it's saying is that we're replacing the old version, which was just Halifax Regional Police. The new timeline that has been, a lot of background work has been done, will include RCMP. So this budget, this motion is the effective way to get to where we need to get. So I'll leave it on the floor if someone would like to put the motion forward. Commissioner Smith.
It is recommended that the Board of Police Commissioners for the Halifax Regional Municipality adopt the Board of Police Commissioners budget timeline, replacing the Halifax Regional Police Business Plan/budget timeline for inclusion in the Board of Police Commissioners Policy Manual as outlined in attachment 1 of this report.
Seconded by Commissioner Akindoju. Any debate?
Really quickly, and Josh, if you don't mind, with this being now integrated into our policy manual, all of the motions from previous commissioners have been accounted in this change, right? So that's from like the capital piece, that's timelines in terms of when things come. Do you feel confident that we've addressed, from your knowledge anyway, addressed all the motions are related to budget into the policy manual? So now we're kind of on a hope to be on a fluid budget process moving forward.
I am, yeah, thank you for the question. I am confident that this does take into account the motions and questions that took place in December. I know Commissioner Giles had some questions as well that have been incorporated. Capital is referenced here. And then, of course, I did work closely with the RCMP and finance on this. So not to say that there might be other questions that arise in the future that need to be addressed, but up until this date, I think that everything has been addressed.
You're welcome. Thank you. Commissioner O'Malley?
Just a question about in an election year, what element of shift? Because I noticed that, even under September's initiatives, that, or even October, there's engagement activities going on. Does everything get laid out to November, or do we?
I can answer that.
October 1st and
Yeah.
shipped out, or?
Thank you. I can answer that. So in election year, we would all continue to be members, those councillor members, until such time as the election is over. On the date that it's over, I think, is there a grace period until because at the end of November is when the new councillors are
So
sworn in.
what happens with the election, all councillor membership, I believe, ends. And then after the election at regional council, I believe it's scheduled for the first meeting. The appointments of the councillor members will be made at that first regional council meeting after the new council is sworn in.
So is that when the writ is dropped? Like when the call for the election is?
I believe it's the election itself.
That's what I'm thinking, yes.
Like
So
October
so the way I
19th.
had said it was correct. We will all remain as commissioners right up until the date of the election, which I think is October 19th this year. And then after that, there'll be a gap, which actually would probably work out because we typically go every 2 months. So it wouldn't be until after the new, so the potential for a new member being appointed or any of us all replaced could be there, but your terms would remain the same.
I guess I was just trying to understand with the activities in each month, this is describing a process for non-election year. In an election year, what happens.
Yeah. Marty can answer that.
What typically happens is right after the election, there's a council meeting very quickly. Okay, in order to keep things on the rails, so the actual gap is very narrow. So I don't think it will affect the timetable.
Oh, okay. So this is a legitimate schedule for election year end.
Yes, yeah. Well, we'll find out, won't we? Josh?
If I invited finance to come to this meeting to answer that kind of technical question. They're the ones that kind of that own this process, for lack of a better word. I think it's safe to say that like they wanted to be very clear with me that when they drafted this, that this applies, the specific dates and months apply to non-election years. I think it's safe to say, I can't give you exact dates or months at this point, but things will be pushed back a little bit, right? So we might not be starting in September. We're not meeting in October. So push back a month or two, and then, but the same general time frame would apply maybe a month or two later.
Follow up, does that mean? If things get shifted a couple of months, does that mean a crunch to get the work done by the original, February date, or does it slip out further into March? And so,
Well, typically the budget as a whole is approved in April, right? So we have up until, we have a month or two buffer that we could work with if things need to be pushed out.
And just as history for you, we actually asked for it to come earlier in October because there is so much volume, there's so much to consider. So, and last year we successfully did it, relatively successfully. And we, that was 1 year. So keeping it in that momentum is an important piece. It's a huge improvement to what we had. Thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, nay? Okay, motion's carried. Okay, members of the Board of Police Commissioners, 10.3.1, Commissioner Akondoju around the Canadian Association of Police Governance Conference.
Through your chair, I recommend that the board of the police, thank you, that the Board of Police Commission for Halifax Regional Municipality consider the appointment of a commissioner as the board's nominee to serve on the Canadian Association of Police Governors Board of Directors for the term 2024 to 2026.
Second.
Can I just have a minute before we go further? Just like a quick question. Do we have a member selected? Okay, so for clarity, that motion has been put. Do we have a seconder? Thank you. And any debate on the consider an appointment? And if that passes, we then go, when we're in camera, we would to consider the appointee. And no?
Would we go on camera now or after? So should we defer this and then ratify it? Because it's weird that we put it on the floor and then we're gonna then discuss it in camera later.
I think it makes sense to defer it.
This is merely. Am I on?
No.
Okay, this is merely to say that you're going to appoint someone, okay? Period. Without this. you're
Consider
not
the
appointing
appointment.
it, right? So this, all you're doing is authorize saying the board is going to appoint someone. And
Awkward.
you could come back and ratify it, yes.
Seems confusing, but that's fine.
Yeah, well, normally we come with
With a
name and
Okay.
we vetted it. Okay.
Thank you.
That's it.
All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion's carried. And the last item on this would be a motion that I'd like to put forward. So I'd ask Commissioner Giles to take the chair role while we do that. On
happy to do it. Thank you.
11.1.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kent has indicated that she has a motion to put before the board. The motion is compound in 3 parts. It's on page 5 of the marked up agenda. And Commissioner Kent has some opening remarks with respect to her motion. It being an added item, it requires a 2/3 majority of the quorum present. But I suggest that rather than us dealing with this in 2 parts, whether the motion can go ahead or not, we listen to Commissioner Kent's.
Excuse me, Vice Chair, the addition was approved during the order of business, so we're good to go.
Okay. So we'll hear Chair Kent on her motion, and then we'll have a period of clarification questions from commissioners to the extent that there are any. Then a wrap up, and then we'll vote on the motion.
Thank you.
Floor is yours.
Thank you,
Commissioner
Mr.
Kent.
Vice Chair. I move that the Board of Police Commissioners for the Halifax Regional Municipality, 1, direct the Chief of HRP and advise the officer in charge of the RCMP Halifax District to work together in reviewing each recommendation contained in the MCC Report, Volume 5, Policing. Number 2, direct the Chief of HRP and advise the officer in charge of the RCMP Halifax District to produce a joint staff report outlining those recommendations in which they are able to work together to implement. And number 3, direct the Chief of the HRP and advise the officer in charge of the RCMP Halifax District to provide joint quarterly updates using the Joint Chief Reporting Template.
Questions or comments on the motion for Commissioner Kent? Second by Commissioner Blackman. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to speak to that. So obviously, for anyone who has attempted to read the large report, there are very specific pieces to the MCC report that have an impact on our the policing service here and within the municipality and our board governance. There's a large space where governance, improvement to governance is highlighted in this report. So the intention for this is to give the opportunity to our chiefs to pull their knowledge and insight into the report and bring back a list of those that they could work together on. We need to see that in reflecting on the transformation report as well, this lends to that piece. And as well our strategic priorities, which is an improved governance around structure. And this, the way it's worded by virtue of work together is the piece that and working through the Joint Chief Reporting Template is improvement for us, is acknowledging that pillar, which is where we talk about improving our governance, strengthening the structure of governance that we are doing every day here. So this is what it's about. I would encourage, if there's any that the chiefs have in the list, now I don't have it in front of me, so I can't pull out any. If we need to be more specific about which ones, but I kind of feel like we left that open in the motion so that we would not preempt the space of directing you to certain recommendations. Maybe there are recommendations that we wouldn't necessarily have thought of that you would. So that's why this is coming forward today.
Questions for clarification of the commissioner, please.
Go ahead. Oh, sorry. Old habits.
Thank you, Chair, via Vice Chair. So support this with a question, and I'm not sure who would answer this. So did the boards, and I looked through, and I think we gave direction on recommendations, but I don't know how far it goes in terms of, is it totally different from what's being asked today? But we did give direction on going through the recommendations of the MCC and transformation on what's in line with the board and its scope and direction. So just trying to understand how this is different than prior direction.
Josh will speak to it.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So shortly after the MCC came out, the first meeting, in fact, after the MCC came out, I was asked to prepare a staff report that identified recommendations within the board's statutory mandate. So I did that work. Be happy to share that report once again. What that report did not do is get into kind of the operations. It did not direct, like there was no recommendation directing the chief or advising the RCMP to do certain work. It was simply a list. Well, there was more to it than that, but it included a list of recommendations. So this came out of a report that's actually included as an information report on this agenda, where I looked at alignment between recommendations in various public safety reports. Council considered that report, gave direction on certain items. But again, that did not include policing related recommendations, because that is within the mandate of this board. So what I think this motion does is it reinforces the transformation work, and it gives the board an opportunity to provide some direction with regards to recommendations contained in the MCC, which of course is a foundational report. And from my perspective as the strategist for this board, it would be appropriate for the board to give some direction related to the MCC, but I'll leave it to the board to discuss.
Thank you. And I remember that report in both reports, the one that came to council. So all great, all spoke on the work that's being done. Just wanted to make sure that we, weren't duplicating, but understanding that we haven't given direction to the chiefs, which is, a whole other thing. So I just want to make sure that there wasn't aspects that we're duplicating, but support it, because we haven't given that direction of now how do you move forward, chiefs, with these recommendations from these reports. So happy to support this. Thank you.
Commissioner Kent, do you want to add anything to Mr. Bates's comments?
To whose comments?
Josh's.
Oh, yes.
He's Mr. Bates.
Yes, he is Mr. Bates. Yeah, that's the conversation that we had more recently, Josh and I, but it is the right thing to do at this point. And the piece that is not in it, which I think is the appropriate for it not to be in it, is not for us to preclude what areas they would have a sense of working together on. And that's the key. We want to enhance and support the transformation piece. They're doing a great job. I should say that directly to both Acting Chief and Chief Christie. That really nice to see the space that we have. It's a significant change to where it's been in the past. But around the MCC report in particular, I think another important piece is for us to get regular updates on what are we achieving, because that report does speak to all of us. And we as a board, I'd like to see us hear a little bit more each time. Not that you don't do it, you could do it within and capture it within your monthly, your updates, your meeting updates. But I think that this report deserves specific attention regularly to us. Do they have any comments?
Commissioners, Chief and Chief Superintendent?
Vice Chair, through you to Commissioner, Councillor Kent and the board. I think the first question is just the large span. There's 130 recommendations actually in. So I think
Specific to policing?
Well, I think so. The information report, I haven't seen the motion because I don't believe the motion's here. The information report is just, we'll look
The
at
motion is in the agenda.
So the document that I'm looking at says direct the chief of HRP and advise the officer in charge to work together reviewing each recommendation contained in the MCC report, volume 5, specific to
Yes.
volume 5.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
that's where it is.
Fair enough. I think we all understand in policing, from Yarmouth to Ingonish Beach, the importance as a police community to respond, which is why Department of Justice is also a lead stakeholder in this. Perhaps if it was suitable for the board, the two chiefs could have this and bring back a suggestion on how to sort of operationalize and bring you back a solution. Because again, when we're working on things, the Department of Justice is leading certain areas and so on. But I understand the importance of this for the board. My recommendation, could we bring it back once we've had a look at specific to volume 5?
Yeah. So as the mover, I would be open to having a deferral so that you can have the chance to do that. And go ahead.
Well, I would appreciate that. I stand to be corrected, but one of them, for example, is around flight operations and a helicopter, right? Around, we were in Tantallon, some of us were doing a community hall and either in Tantallon or in Lower Sackville, and folks asked about the helicopter, right? And what does that actually look like in an operational context? And what position would both agencies,
Right.
you know,
That'd
land
be my
on,
next budget request.
right?
You
So,
won't need it because he has one.
so I think what's important is if we could have
Yeah.
the tolerance of the board to come back, I think that would be time well spent.
And from my
Yeah.
perspective, I read the MCC at some point. I don't remember the volume of recommendations that's in volume 5. I tried to look for it now on my phone. It's a difficult document to peruse on your phone. There's so many
Yeah.
moving pieces, but so I think that's fine in terms. I'm sure we can do something. Just get a sense of what it is that's applicable to us.
Commissioner O'Malley.
So just before we go there, Marty, just so I understand this, the appropriate next step be to defer, or would it be to pass the motion and then have them? Because I think what they're saying is achieving what is being asked. Number 2 is producing a report outlining those recommendations in which they could work together. And 3 is revising is to provide a quarterly updates.
I guess what I'm hearing, and I may be hearing incorrectly, what I'm hearing from Chief Superintendent Christie is that there may be other levels of government involved in some of this, which wouldn't be encapsulated, and that they
Okay.
would come back as part of their proposal and spill that out into the various things, and the board would then have a better understanding of exactly what
Okay.
would lead this forward.
Okay,
But the motion would then not be deferred.
Yes, the motion would be deferred until they came back.
in
with
case
something.
it has to be amended a bit. Yeah.
And
I'm
a
okay
motion
with
to-
that.
And a motion to defer takes precedent over the actual, so you take that first.
So-
Commissioner O'Malley first.
Okay.
Thank you. Just in looking at number 2, it seems to be narrow. Like there are some things that each organization may need to, and again, I haven't looked at the recommendations in volume 5, but there could be recommendations unique for each organization and not be able to necessarily work together. I think it'd be nice to know, what can you work together on? What do you plan to work on, but you have to work on independently or as separate organizations, given the nature of your organizations, and what's not intended to be worked on? Kind of 3 buckets would be nice to know.
Can I also help, if I can help on that? Commonly, what may be done with the deferral, right, is also to give some direction.
Like that.
So with that they can sort of take back with them and get an idea of what you're looking for in the deferral. So,
Commissioner Kent, it's your motion. Do you
Thank you,
want to,
yes.
do you want to move its deferral?
I'd move to defer this to the next, I don't know,
Seconder?
how long do you need, do you think?
I think the next early September or late
Okay.
August, whenever the next meeting is.
Just, the only reason I say that, there seems to be a lot of things on that August 7th meeting, like it's getting quite expansive.
I could,
Well, let's not set a date which isn't achievable.
yeah, let's just
Let's just say
defer to a
future
future meeting.
conditions they know.
I think they know what they're gonna,
If I may
I think
say, Chair, for
Commissioner
you.
O'Malley's point was very strong take.
Yes, and if I may just say, I just happen to have volume 5 here downloaded on my phone. But there's a number of things happening all the time. The police
Yeah.
dogs were
Yeah.
cross-training recently. The emergency response teams are working more closely than ever before, which are some of the recommendations about how that interoperability is. So I think you'll have a good response, but I think the time will be helpful to figure out how do we boil
agree.
that response down?
Yeah.
So it's simple, effective, and basically smart and achievable, helpful for the board.
Yeah. So I think that deferring to a future meeting allows for us to get a sense periodically from you if you're close to being ready, give you the time that you need. Okay, and did
Can we
you
have a
second
seconder,
that?
please, on Commissioner Kent? Commissioner Blackburn? Second, thank you. I think there's been enough discussion. Call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion's passed.
Thank you. Do I have the floor again? Thank you. Good job, Mr. Vice Chair. Okay, we would now need to move into in-camera. I don't think there's any great need for these folks to have to remain behind, right?
You could approve the in-camera minutes too before we go in camera if you
Yeah.
wish.
Okay, I just want, I'm just trying to ascertain whether or not the chiefs and the folks in the audience need to stay. I don't really think you need to, just so you can, when we go in, you don't have to stick around. Would someone like to test? Go ahead, Commissioner Smith.
Just before I'll put the minutes, do we need to add an item for in camera related to the,
Yes, Commissioner Akindush's motion 10.3.1 would need to be also included in the list for why we think convening in camera.
okay, so motion to add item, what was the number? Sorry.
10.3.1 and 12.2 would be the reasons why we'd be convening in camera.
Okay, so I think we need to add another in-camera item, correct?
Yes.
So 10.12.3.
Yeah, which is the name of the representative,
Yeah.
the appointee. Separate.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure we didn't. All right, cool. All right, excellent. So I'll move the minutes for May 1st, 2024 and May 30th, 2024.
Seconded by Commissioner Blackburn, moved by Commissioner Smith. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion's carried. Okay, we'll now go into in camera.
Get a motion.
Get a motion to go in camera? Commissioner Blackburn. Don't need a seconder for that one, I don't think. Or do we? Commissioner O'Malley.
now live, Chair.
Thank you. Now call the meeting back to order, and we will proceed with reverting back to 10.3.1. We have a motion momentarily. Okay, Commissioner Blackburn.
All right, thank you. I move that the Board of Police Commissioners for the Halifax Regional Municipality select Commissioner Yemi Akindoju to serve as the Commission's nominee to the Canadian Association of Police Governance Board of Directors for the term of 2024 to 2026. I so move.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Giles. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion's carried. Okay, moving on now to added item 11.1. Someone else can do that one. It's 12.2? How did it get to 12.2? Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay, I gotcha. All right. I don't need to do that ratification, so would someone else like to do that one?
That the Board of Police Commission for Halifax Regional Municipality 1 adopts the direction provided in camera. And 2, direct that the private and confidential dated June 7, 2024 be maintaining private confidentiality.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Second.
Seconded, Commissioner Giles. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion's carried. And now we have, are there any notices of motion for the next meeting? Hearing none. Next meeting is August 7th. And can someone call for adjournment?
Moved.
Commissioner Giles, so moved. Thank you, everyone. Great meeting.
Martin, before you go, come and look at my map.
Yeah, I'm going to. It's on my schedule there.
How's my hair? He's putting me on a camera.
Oh,